Chapter 162. Immerse had originally planned to sign in at Emperor Qin's mausoleum today. But at this moment, he was addicted to devouring. As soon as he woke up, he wanted to continue using his clone to devour and evolve. If it weren't for the fact that he was so hungry, he would have gone there long ago. Seeing that Immerse had woken up, Happy hurriedly heated up the food again. Now, the base had provided them with all kinds of daily necessities. They even had a microwave, an electric cooker, and so on. They even had a luxury home appliance like a refrigerator. One had to know that in the entire base, only the hunting group and the cafeteria had one. In order to save electricity, even the base chief didn't use a refrigerator. The food they ate was also specially made for them by the cafeteria. Bread, cake, twice-cooked pork, roasted chicken, and so on. Even the base chief and the leader of the hunting group couldn't eat it. This wasn't requested by Immerse and Happy, but by the base chief who specially prepared it for Immerse. Although the base didn't do this kind of thing. But it also depended on the person. Immerse had saved the base from danger several times. If it weren't for Immerse, they would have died several times. Therefore, they had no objections to Immerse having all kinds of privileges. Not only did they have no objections, but they were even very happy. After all, Immerse had saved them so many times, but he had never asked for anything from them. They wanted to thank him, but they had no way to do so. This made them feel very apologetic. Now, if they could do something insignificant for Immerse, it would lessen the guilt in their hearts a little. They were naturally happy. After dinner, Immerse chatted with Happy for a while, then couldn't wait to go back to his room. He was like a boy who left his girlfriend aside for a game. Now that the sea dragon clone had been condensed, he didn't need to let his main body run to the Yellow River. With a thought, his mind switched to the clone's body on the Yellow River. But when he opened his eyes, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. It turned out that the two mutated carps had unknowingly found their way into his nest. They were devouring the sea dragon's body. Although the sea dragon struggled with all its might, without Immerse's mind, it was still no match for the two mutated carps. A third of its body had already been eaten. The entire lair was dyed red with blood. At this moment, a mutant carp opened its bloody mouth and bit down on the Mosasaurus's head. Immerse was enraged when he saw this. His dragon sense spread out. The two mutated carps struggled painfully for a few days after being attacked by the dragon's thoughts. They quickly turned around and dived into the river. Immerse also had a headache. After this body rose to level 7, it could slightly withstand a trace of draconic will. However, when attacking, it would also cause a lot of damage to his head. After the two mutated carps escaped, Immerse looked back at the remaining 2/3 of the body and smiled bitterly. I was too careless. I should have brought this clone back last night. However, neither his personal storage nor his system backpack could contain living creatures. Even if he brought it back, he wouldn't have anywhere to put it. It seemed that he had to find a way to settle down the sea dragon clone before he left tonight. At this time, he took out a bottle of recovery potion, crushed the bottle with his sharp teeth, and swallowed the potion with difficulty. The wound on his back quickly healed. The flesh and blood around the wound were wriggling. 5 minutes later, the wound was completely healed. He glanced at the bottom of the river. It wouldn't be long before the two mutated carps became food in his stomach. Next, he spent more than half an hour devouring the dozens of mutated toads. He successfully rose to level 8. His body length also directly reached 6 meters. Being at level 8, he had a complete level advantage over the two level 7 carps. Moreover, at level 8, he had already become an overlord in this water area. He activated his dragon sense and detected the two mutated carps, who were swaggering by at the bottom of the river. Immerse immediately swung his tail and quickly swam toward the two mutated carps. The two mutated carps saw Immerse's sea dragon clone and couldn't help but feel fear. They still remembered the huge pressure emitted by this strange fish just now, which almost crushed their heads. And they had clearly eaten a lot of this strange fish just now. How did it recover so quickly? In horror, they turned around and fled. However, could they escape? At level 7, they were much smaller than Immerse, who was at level 8. They were also much slower. Immerse easily caught up with a mutated crocodile and opened his huge mouth. Crack! He directly bit off the tail of the mutated carp. Then he ignored it and continued to chase another carp. He slapped it with his tail. Slap! The mutated carp was directly slapped more than 2 meters away, dizzy and disoriented. Then, Immerse controlled the sea dragon clone to bite the head of a mutated carp and bite off its head. It turned around and caught up with the other mutated carp that was fleeing, biting it to death. After devouring these 2 mutated carps, the sea dragon clone had reached level 9. Its body length had also reached nearly 9 meters. At this time, there was nothing in this water area that could compete with it. Then, Immerse's consciousness left it, allowing it to devour freely. Early the next morning, when Immerse woke up, his consciousness returned to the body of the sea dragon clone. He found that it had devoured almost all the infected creatures in the entire water area that night. Because the mutated sea dragon had the ability to devour and evolve, everything it swallowed would be converted into the energy it needed for evolution in a short time. Therefore, no matter how much it swallowed, it would not explode. At this time, the mutated sea dragon's body length had reached 10 meters. Its level had also reached level 10. As long as it leveled up one more time, it would become a strong mutated beast. However, almost all the infected creatures in this water area had been devoured by it. Immerse controlled its body and swam downstream. He would not let go of all the infected creatures he encountered along the way, from large level 7 mutated beasts to small level 1 mutated beasts. It didn't take long for his telekinesis to detect that in front of him, a tributary had been formed because the river had risen a lot more than before. It flowed into a depression in the mountain. After a careful investigation with his telekinesis, he found that this was a reservoir. Under the morning sun, the reservoir was sparkling. On the surface, it looked calm. But when Immerse scanned it with his dragon telekinesis, he found that under the water, there were actually turbulent waves. There were a lot of mutated underwater creatures in the reservoir. And their levels were not high. The highest was only level 7. Immerse was overjoyed. He controlled the sea dragon clone and entered the reservoir. It was like a wolf entering a sheep pen. The infected creatures in the reservoir fled frantically in all directions. But how could they be as fast as Immerse's sea dragon clone? It kept catching up with these infected creatures and swallowing them with its mouth open. Half an hour later, the system's voice finally sounded in Immerse's mind again. Level upgrade. There was no limit or bottleneck to the increase of the sea dragon's strength. In theory, as long as there were countless infected creatures, it could continue to devour and evolve. A series of muffled cracking sounds came from within its body. Its body length grew again. It reached a length of 11 meters. Its eyes had turned blood red. Species, sea dragon, level 1 strong mutated beast, ability, evolution by devouring, dragon telekinesis attack. When Immerse saw this, he let out a long sigh of relief. The clone could finally attack with dragon telekinesis. Chapter 163. It took only 2 days for the sea dragon clone to evolve from an ordinary mutant beast to a strong mutant beast. This speed far exceeded Immerse's expectations. At this moment, he controlled the sea dragon clone to continue devouring in the reservoir. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." Since he had come to the reservoir, he naturally wanted to try and see if he could sign in anything useful to the sea dragon clone here. Soon, the system's voice sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in location, reservoir, sign in reward, personal reservoir. Soon, a small reservoir model appeared in his backpack. The reservoir model looked almost exactly the same as this reservoir. A line of words appeared on it frowny face personal reservoir, an independent space carried by the sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone can enter it. It was a simple sentence. But Immerse's eyes lit up. This was exactly what the sea dragon clone needed the most right now. This personal reservoir was similar to a dragon's den. When the sea dragon entered the personal reservoir, the reservoir would immediately disappear. With a thought from Immerse, a tubular passage with a diameter of more than 20 meters appeared in front of the sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone swam into the tubular passage. In the next moment, the tubular passage disappeared into the reservoir. At this moment, Immerse had already controlled the sea dragon clone to enter the personal reservoir. This personal reservoir was about the same size as the reservoirs outside. Both were the size of a football field. However, there weren't so many mutant beasts in the personal reservoir. There was only one creature, the sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone was in no danger here. Then, with a thought from Immerse, the tubular passage appeared in the reservoir. The sea dragon clone left the reservoir through this tubular passage. When it came to the reservoir in reality, the tubular passage quickly disappeared. For the next day, Immerse let the sea dragon devour in the reservoir. He also tried to teach the sea dragon clone how to enter the personal reservoir. After the sea dragon clone evolved into a strong mutant beast, it was no longer a shell but had developed consciousness. When Immerse's consciousness controlled the sea dragon clone, its consciousness would give way. When Immerse's consciousness left the sea dragon clone, its original consciousness would take over the body. It took Immerse half an hour to teach the sea dragon clone how to enter and leave the personal reservoir. Only then did he feel relieved. Next, he could let this fellow devour as he pleased. With its current strength as a level 1 mutant beast, it was basically a third-rate mutant beast in the Yellow River. As long as it didn't encounter any level 2 mutant beasts, it wouldn't be in any danger. Even if it encountered them, it would be safe as long as it hid in its personal reservoir. Since this guy could rely on himself, Immerse's consciousness returned to his body. The next day, he went back to take a look and found that the sea dragon clone had become a level 2 mutant beast. Its body length had also reached 12 meters. Seeing that the sea dragon clone was intact, Immerse was relieved. Next, it was time to sign in at Emperor Qin's mausoleum. Besides, Immerse planned to bring Happy with him when he left this time. Since Happy was a heaven's oracle, he naturally had to let her gain more knowledge. Moreover, Huaxia was no longer a threat to him. Maybe Happy could awaken the ability of a heaven's oracle after going out and gaining experience. When Happy heard that Immerse was going to take her to the wild area, her first reaction was anticipation. The base was only so big. After living in the base for more than 20 years, who didn't want to go out and have a look? But soon, Happy shook her head. She gestured with sign language. "I'm afraid I'll be a burden to Brother Immerse smiled. He patted Happy's shoulder. "Don't worry, the person who can be a burden to your brother Immerse hasn't been born yet." That day, Immerse said goodbye to the leader of the corpse farm and left with Happy. The leader didn't dare to scold Immerse like before. When he heard that Immerse was leaving, he quickly said, "Mr. Immerse, don't worry. Mr. Immerse, don't worry. I'll get someone to take care of the corpse farm for you." Blood dragon wings appeared on Immerse's back. He wrapped his right hand around Happy's waist, flapped his wings slightly, and soared into the sky. He controlled his speed and only flew 10 meters per second. First of all, Happy's body was just that of a normal person. If he was too fast, she might not be able to take it. Second of all, there was nothing important. He could just treat it as bringing Happy out for a vacation. Happy looked at the green world below, and her eyes were filled with curiosity. She was like a child who had just come to an unfamiliar place. It was spring. Peach blossoms could be seen below from time to time. From afar, they looked like red clouds dotting the green ground. After more than an hour, they finally arrived above Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Immerse used Blood Dragon's eyes to look. The corpse aura here still seemed to have solidified. Immerse found it strange. Logically speaking, Qin Shi Huang was not as strong as the Zombie King. But this corpse aura seemed to be thicker than the Zombie King. There was definitely something strange about this. Just as he was thinking, a beast-like roar came from Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the imperial mausoleum?" Immerse retracted his wings and landed in front of a green-faced zombie figurine. Happy looked at the green zombie figurine curiously. On the way here, Immerse had already told her about Qin Shi Huang. But when she saw the green-faced zombie figurine, she was still very shocked. The terracotta soldiers had really come to life. The green-faced zombie figurine recognized Immerse and said, "So, it's you. His Majesty said that you don't need to report your arrival and can enter the underground palace directly." Then, he looked at Happy beside him and said, "But she can't. I have to report to His Majesty first." Immerse nodded. The green-faced zombie figurine immediately entered the mausoleum from an entrance at the back. Around 10 minutes later, the green-faced zombie figurine returned. He made a not-so-standard hand gesture and said to Immerse and Happy, "His Majesty allows you to enter. Please come with me." Then, he turned around and led Immerse and Happy to the entrance at the back of the Imperial Mausoleum. There were 10 zombie figurines guarding the place. They entered the entrance and walked forward along the tunnel. After walking for around 50 meters, the tunnel gradually widened. There would occasionally be forks on both sides of the tunnel. There were many fist-sized holes on the stone walls on both sides of the tunnel. After Immerse used dragon's wool to investigate, he found that there were all sorts of arrows and spears in the holes. There were also many small holes on the ground of the tunnel. There was a sharp spike in each of the holes. One could imagine that if someone barged in recklessly, they would be turned into a porcupine. As they walked forward along the tunnel, there were also stone ball tunnels, poisonous insect traps, moving stone walls, and all sorts of other mechanisms. After walking for another 50 meters, the tunnel opened up. Chapter 164. From the entrance of the mausoleum, Qin Xiaolian passed through all kinds of mechanisms and traps. After walking for more than 100 meters, the scene before him suddenly opened up. It was a huge space. This space was much bigger than the mausoleum outside. It turned out that Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum had emptied out the mausoleum. The mausoleum outside was only the tip of the iceberg. The entire space was as big as a small city. And in this huge space, there was really an underground city. According to the history books and archaeologists' reports, there was an underground palace under Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Many palace maids, servants, and soldiers were buried with him. Now, it seemed that they had underestimated Qin Shi Huang's ambition. This was not an underground palace, but an underground city. In this underground city, all the buildings were real buildings. The houses were habitable, and there was water in the wells. There were also all kinds of terracotta figurines on the streets and in the rooms. However, these terracotta figurines were real terracotta figurines. They did not come to life like the zombie figurines. These terracotta figurines were imitating all kinds of life scenes. Some were peddling, some were hurrying, and some were eating. After Immerse's draconic perception scanned the area, he discovered that there were 2 terracotta figurines doing shameless things in one of the rooms. The number of terracotta figurines in the underground city was probably around 150,000 to 50,000. Some people said that Qin Shi Huang had brought his army underground even after his death. In fact, he had brought the entire city underground. As Qin Xiaolian continued forward, a majestic palace appeared. Inside the palace, there were tens of thousands of huge everlasting lamps. One could clearly see the palace. On the main gate of the palace, which was over 20 meters wide, there were 3 big seal characters, Ipang Palace. When Immerse was in school, he had learned the Ipang Palace. The Ipang Palace described in the book was extremely luxurious and grand. Qin Xiaolian did not expect Qin Shi Huang to bring Ipang Palace underground. Around Ipang Palace, there was a river that flowed around the palace. Within the river, there was shining mercury flowing. After entering Ipang Palace, Qin Xiaolian finally arrived at the meeting hall, Happy Palace. In the spacious hall of Happy Palace, the zombie Qin Shi Huang was sitting on the dragon throne. He was born with a majestic aura, and with the addition of the dragon throne, the domineering aura of a king was undoubtedly revealed. To his left was a figurine general with a bronze sword hanging from his waist, Butcher Bai Chi. When Bai Chi saw Mo sure and happy, he let out a beastly roar. "Impudent commoner, how dare you not kneel when you see His Majesty?" Mo sure frowned slightly. "Did I give you face? The last time you scolded me, I ignored you. This time, he actually scolded me in front of my girlfriend. Do I not care about my face?" At the thought of this, he suddenly extended his dragon consciousness. Butcher Bai Chi immediately fell to his knees with a thump. He knew that this human was the culprit. With anger in his eyes, he tried to stand up. But no matter how much he struggled, it was as if a mountain was pressing down on him, and he couldn't move at all. He was just a level 2 mutated zombie. How could they resist Mo Shi's level 2 dragon will? When Qin Shi Huang saw this, he was shocked. This person actually had such a miraculous technique? With just a single glance, General Bai Chi was unable to move at all. He immediately turned his head and said to Bai Chi, "General Bai Chi, don't be rude." Then, he said to Mo Shi, "Warrior, if General Bai Chi has offended you, please forgive him." Only then did Mo Shi retract his dragon consciousness. When Bai Chi stood up and looked at Mo Shi, a hint of fear finally appeared in the eyes of the butcher. He had killed millions of enemies and was known as the God of Death, also known as the Butcher. Even if he was alone, facing thousands of enemies, he wouldn't be afraid at all. But now, facing Mo Shi, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. As the saying goes, the unknown is the most terrifying. Mo Shi's ability had already exceeded the scope of his understanding. In his eyes, this was not an ability that a human could have. Perhaps only a demon could have it. While they were talking, a crow flew in from the side door of the palace. It landed on the stone steps below Qin Shi Huang's feet. The crow let out a hoarse cry from its throat. "Your Majesty, I've found some traces of that demon Su Fu." When Mo Shi saw this crow, he felt that it was somewhat familiar. It was as if he had seen it before. He immediately activated the blood dragon's eye and looked at the crow. Species, mutated crow, level 3, ability, heart of a general. When Mo Shi saw this, he frowned slightly. Heart of a general? It was said that Jiangchen was one of the 4 zombie progenitors. According to the legends, he was an extremely terrifying existence. How could this crow have the heart of a general? At the same time, he recognized this crow through its corpse aura. Back then, when he killed the zombie leader on the broken bridge by the dam, and the mutated owl in the blood-colored city near base C2, they all seemed to have the same corpse aura. No wonder it could come back to life after he killed it twice. But wasn't it infected with the X virus? How could it be with Qin Shi Huang, who was infected with the zombie virus? At this moment, Qin Shi Huang said to the mutated crow, "Zhao Gao, you've been working hard these days. Go and rest first. We'll talk about the demon Su Fu later." Obviously, he didn't want to talk about this in front of Mo Shi. The mutated crow nodded and said, "Yes." Then, it flapped its wings and flew out of the side door. Mo Shi was surprised. Chapter 165. Mo Shi signed in at Emperor Qin's underground palace. The system's voice sounded in his mind. Frowny face. Sign in successful. Sign in location, Emperor Qin's mausoleum underground palace. Sign in reward, Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal, Virtual Dragon Palace, Dam. Mo Shi couldn't help but feel a little excited. The reward this time was actually a dragon palace and the Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal. He had thought that he would definitely get something good from signing. He didn't expect it to be so good. The Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal was one thing, but this dragon palace was too exaggerated. And wasn't his future evolution direction a Titan dragon? It was a Western dragon. In his impression, Western dragons seemed to be kings of mountains and lived in caves. Only Eastern dragons would live in dragon palaces. Why did the system reward him with a dragon palace? He checked the two rewards in his mind. Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal produces natural pressure on dragons, regardless of level. Well, it looked very high and mighty. And it was an item that ignored the other party's level. It should be very useful after becoming a Titan dragon. But at the current stage, it didn't seem to be useful. After all, there were no living dragons or divine dragons on Earth today. Then, Immerse turned his attention to the Virtual Dragon Palace. Virtual Dragon Palace can be set up anywhere. Any creature that trains in the Dragon Palace can stimulate their potential to the greatest extent, increase the speed of body strengthening, help break through the limit, and speed up the evolution process. Well, it was indeed heaven-defying. Any creature that trained in the Dragon Palace could stimulate their potential to the greatest extent. Didn't this mean that if he set up this Virtual Dragon Palace in the base, then everyone in the base could quickly become stronger? And wasn't Happy's oracle ability not awakened yet? If she stayed in this Virtual Dragon Palace for a while, would it be possible for her to awaken her oracle ability? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look forward to it. But there was one thing that made him dissatisfied with this sign-in. The two things that he signed were temporarily useless, and the other was for others to use. He didn't seem to get anything. But at this time, a line of text appeared above the Virtual Dragon Palace. Frowny face host can receive double rewards by signing in at the Virtual Dragon Palace. Battle in the Virtual Dragon Palace can receive double combat effectiveness bonus. Seeing this, Immerse nodded secretly. That's more like it. Immerse had planned to stay one more night and return to set up the Virtual Dragon Palace the next day. But Happy still felt that the underground palace was a little eerie. Thus, Immerse left the underground palace that afternoon. Before leaving, Immerse turned his head and looked at the crow beside Qin Shi Huang. This crow had the heart of a general and a minister. Perhaps it would be a disaster in the future. Immerse wanted to get rid of it, but he hadn't been able to kill it even though he had tried twice before. Perhaps in the future, he would be able to sign in and obtain some magic treasures or skills that specialized in restraining it. When the crow saw Immerse staring at it, its pair of round eyes stared back at Immerse. After a while, Immerse looked away and flew to base C1 with Happy in tow. After Immerse left, Crow Zhao Gao hissed, "That's right. Your Majesty, this person is a scourge. We cannot let him live." Qin Shi Huang waved his hand. "Don't talk nonsense. Perhaps he will become a general of the Great Qin in the future." Then, he said to the crow, "Your mission is to bring General Bai Qi to capture the demon Su Fu." Crow Zhao Gao hurriedly prostrated on the ground and said, "Yes." After Immerse left Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, he returned to base C1 half an hour later. With a thought, he set up the entire Virtual Dragon Palace in base C1. The entire Dragon Palace covered the entire base C1. Of course, just like the Virtual Sentry Tower, no one else could see or touch the Virtual Dragon Palace. Only from Immerse's perspective could he see how magnificent the Dragon Palace was. The gate of the base city was the Dragon Gate of the Dragon Palace. It was more than 20 meters tall and magnificent. Looking from the sky, there were about 1,000 palaces in the entire Dragon Palace. And at the location of the corpse farm was the Dragon King Hall. When Immerse landed on the base from the sky, he could feel that the entire base seemed to be different from before. As for what was different, he couldn't figure it out in a short time. After finishing the arrangement, he looked at Happy beside him. He hoped that with the enhancement of the Dragon Palace, he could stimulate Happy's potential as soon as possible and awaken her oracle ability. After midnight that night, Immerse said in his mind, "System, specify the Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid and double the sign-in." Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, 2,000 drops of Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. When Immerse heard this, he was secretly delighted. Signing in the Virtual Dragon Palace was indeed useful. Previously, he estimated that it would take another 20 days to a month before he could level up again. Now, it seemed that he could level up again in half a month at most. The next morning, good news came one after another from the hunter group. In one night, more than 30 people in the hunter group broke through. These people had not broken through for many years. With their physical talent, they could only stop at their current realm for the rest of their lives. But now, they suddenly broke through. This made them all pleasantly surprised. However, apart from being pleasantly surprised, they were also puzzled. In one night, more than 30 of them who had not broken through for many years actually broke through at the same time. This was very strange. And this was only the beginning. For the next day, good news came from all over the base. Have you heard? When Uncle's son from the canteen woke up today, he suddenly found that his strength had increased a lot. After his zombie hunter son saw it, he was surprised to find that he was already a zombie hunter. Are you serious? I remember that Uncle's son had been injected with Virus X enhancer before. Didn't the enhancement fail in the end? Not only Uncle's son, but also old Yang in the warehouse, little Zhang in the water tower, and Chang Zi in the patrol team all became zombie hunters overnight. Damn, what's going on? Someone next to him said, not only that, I heard that 5 teachers in the school alone have become zombie hunters. And that teacher Wang actually became a psychokinesis overnight. It seems that something is definitely going to happen in our base. Soon, the news was summarized in front of the base chief. The base chief looked at the news and was also surprised. In the end, his gaze fell on one of the sentences: the closer you are to the zombie farm, the more people break through, and the more people succeed in strengthening. The staff officer next to him said, previously, there were no abnormalities in the base. Last night, Mr. Mo just came back. In one night, more than 30 people broke through in the base, and more than 100 people who failed in strengthening suddenly became zombie hunters or psychokinesis. This must be related to Mr. Mo. The chief nodded. Ask Leader Guo of the hunter group to come over. I will go with him to visit Mr. Mo. Chapter 166. Mo sure woke up early in the morning but didn't get out of bed. Instead, he first transferred his consciousness into the sea dragon clone. At this time, the sea dragon clone had reached a length of 13 meters. It was a level 3 mutant beast. It seemed that this guy had been devouring while he was away. As a level 3 mutant beast, it was invincible within 100 kilometers upstream and downstream. Mo sure switched his consciousness back to his main body. As a level 3 mutant beast, the sea dragon clone had no problem dealing with level 6 mutant beasts with the trace of dragon consciousness he had left in it. He didn't need to keep his consciousness in its body all the time like he did for the previous 2 nights. At the current speed, it would probably become a super mutant beast in at most a month. At that time, it would be invincible in the entire Yellow River Basin. At this time, Happy had already placed the food he got from the cafeteria on the stone table under the grape rack. He knocked on the door of Mo Shure's room. Mo Shure responded. When he came out, Happy had already placed hot water and a towel at the door. After Mo Shure washed his face, the two of them sat under the grape rack and slowly ate breakfast. At the same time, more than 300 meters away from the corpse farm, 3 people were heading toward it. They were the base chief, Guo Jutao, the leader of the hunting group, and Du Xiaodo. The chief had originally planned to come with the leader of the hunting group. However, considering that Du Xiaodo had worked with Mo Shure before, he was the person who knew Mo Shure the best in the base apart from Happy. Therefore, they felt that it was best to bring Du Xiaodo along. Although Guo Jutao was already the leader of the hunting group, he still walked with a hint of femininity. He said, Captain Xiaodo, will we disturb Mr. Mo if we go there rashly? The chief also looked at Du Xiaodo. Du Xiaodo thought for a moment and said, Mr. Mo is very easygoing. As long as we don't provoke him, it shouldn't be a problem. Guo Jutao was stunned and asked, then if we disturb him rashly, does that count as provoking him? This question seemed a little silly. But in front of Mr. Mo, he had to be careful. Du Xiaodo recalled the Mo Shure in his memory and said, I don't think so. Guo Jutao nodded. That's good. But then he asked, wouldn't it be too much for 3 of us to go? Du Xiaodo said, I think these are all small problems. As long as we don't disturb him too often, it shouldn't be a problem for us to visit him once in a while. The bureau chief also spoke up. Yes, with Mr. Mo's height and magnanimity, it's unlikely that he can't even tolerate 3 people. Not long after, the 3 of them arrived at the corpse farm. When Happy saw the trio, he quickly stood up. After all, the 3 of them were big shots in the base. Immerse pointed to the food on the table and said, "If the 3 of you haven't eaten before, why don't you eat together?" The 3 of them hurriedly replied, "Yes, we have." Immerse had already guessed their intentions. He took a sip of water and said, "Ask away." The 3 of them were stunned. It seemed that Mr. Mo already knew their intentions. Then, this matter was most likely related to Mr. Mo. The chief of the base didn't have the dignity that he usually had in front of others. Instead, he lowered his stance. "Mr. Mo, last night, more than 30 people in the base suddenly broke through. Moreover, many ordinary people who had failed in the past had become corpse hunters or psychics overnight. This should be related to Mr. Mo, right?" Hearing this, Immerse was secretly surprised. Was the Dragon Palace so effective? On the surface, he just nodded slightly. Yes. Hearing this, the 3 of them looked at each other again. As expected. Immerse continued. "Let everyone train hard. Everyone has the possibility of becoming a corpse hunter or psychokinesis. Those who haven't broken through for a long time will also break through in a short time." A hint of joy flashed through the chief's eyes. Everyone had the possibility of becoming a corpse hunter or psychokinesis. This was simply unimaginable in the past. As for why it was like this, they saw that Immerse didn't seem to want to say more, so they didn't ask. After staying for more than 5 minutes, the 3 of them left the corpse farm. For the next 5 days, several people in the corpse hunter group broke through every day. In the entire base, there were 50 to 60 ordinary people who became corpse hunters or psychokinesis every day. They also knew that this was related to Mr. Mo. All of them were grateful to Immerse. At the same time, when Immerse checked Happy's attributes, he found that there was finally a change. Species, human, level, oracle, unawakened, ability, unknown. It didn't change much from before, but there was one less question mark. But at least it gave Immerse hope. It seemed that the virtual Dragon Palace's effect of stimulating potential was also useful to Happy. Immerse couldn't help but look forward to it. It was also on this afternoon that something unexpected happened to Immerse. In front of the Leshan giant Buddha of the 4 provinces. One of Immerse's virus clones was standing there. Now, the entire Leshan giant Buddha's body was covered with blood-red vines. It was as if countless blood vessels were crawling on the Buddha's body. The Buddha was blood-red, and its eyes were frighteningly red. The 1051 spiral buns on the Buddha's head were all replaced by blood-red sarcomas. The interior of the Buddha had been hollowed out. The entire Buddha was a 71-meter-tall virus hive. Immerse's virus clone looked at it impatiently. His right hand turned into a titan dragon claw and slashed down. Whoosh, an invisible force swept past. The head of the blood Buddha immediately fell to the ground. Plop, with a loud bang, it fell into the river below, splashing up a wave of blood dozens of meters high. Then, the Dragon Will clone's psychic power swept across. Bang, 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 in the virus hive, all the infected creatures exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Including the entire blood Buddha, it was directly destroyed by his psychic power. At this point, the 10 virus hives in Huaxia were all destroyed. Without the virus hives, these infected creatures could still continue to grow stronger, but the speed of their growth would plummet. But at this moment, a few sounds came from the sky. Clap, 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 the virus clone looked up. 50 meters above his head, a figure was flapping its wings and hovering there. This person was wearing a black tuxedo. A white shirt. He looked somewhat gentlemanly. However, his pale face, blood-red eyes, and the 2 pairs of sharp teeth in his mouth revealed a hint of ferocity. Behind him, there was a pair of black bat-like wings. At the tip of the wings, there were sharp claws that shone with a cold light under the sun. He let out a few squeaks that were half human and half bat. I didn't expect that a mere low-level human could be so powerful. Interesting. Chapter 167. The person with a pair of wings had a hint of mockery on his pale face. I didn't expect a mere human to be so powerful. Interesting. The virus clone looked at this person with a cold gaze. The pale-faced person was still mocking him. However, no matter how strong humans are, they are still a lowly race. After saying that, he no longer hesitated. He flapped his wings and attacked the virus clone. The virus clone also brazenly faced the attack. The Titan's dragon claw slashed at the pale-faced person. Whoosh! An invisible force instantly pierced through that person's body. However, that person's body wasn't split open. Instead, it flickered and disappeared. It turned out that this was only an afterimage left behind by him. When he reappeared, he was already behind the virus clone. Then, he opened his mouth. Four sharp teeth bit down on the virus clone's neck. Blood immediately gushed out from the virus clone's neck. The virus clone wanted to struggle, but soon, the strength in his body seemed to have been sucked out. He couldn't struggle at all. After a while, that person let go of his mouth. The virus clone immediately fell to the ground and kept twitching. That person took out a snow-white handkerchief from the inner pocket of his tuxedo. He elegantly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His fingers loosened, and the blood-stained handkerchief fluttered with the wind. Like a blood-red butterfly, it floated into the river. That person raised his head and chest. Even his posture looked so noble and elegant. He let out a half-human, half-bat-like squeak. Although your bloodline is lowly, with your strength, you are barely qualified to obtain the noble bloodline of the blood race. Just be my servant. The next moment, the virus clone's back began to slowly tear apart. From the crack, a pair of black bat-like wings stretched out. This pair of wings was only the size of a palm at first. However, it grew with the wind and soon reached about 5 meters. Among its 2 rows of teeth, 4 of them were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His ears had also become slightly pointed. Its eyes also gradually turned blood-red. The blood race nodded in satisfaction. From now on, you are my servant. You should call me master. Let me hear you call me that. The virus clone lowered its head respectfully. He said, Master, your servant is willing to serve you. The Blood Clan member seemed very satisfied and nodded with a smile. Not bad, you're starting to look like one. But. However, before he could finish his sentence, the virus clone suddenly exploded. He pounced on the vampire. The Blood Clan member was caught off guard and had no time to dodge. His neck was bitten by the virus clone. However, the Blood Clan member's skin was as hard as diamond. The virus clone's sharp teeth were unable to bite through its skin. The Blood Clan member was a little confused. He had clearly bitten this human. Logically speaking, this human should have turned into a vampire. Furthermore, he should be 100% loyal to him. Why did it turn around and attack him? Of course, he didn't know that the virus avatar was 100% loyal to Immerse. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be loyal to others. However, the Blood Clan member was surprised. However, she still maintained her elegant smile. With a hint of mockery, he said, Do you think a vampire's body is as weak as a lowly human's? Since you become a vampire, you should know that in this world, there's almost nothing that can hurt a vampire's body. Just as she said that, whoosh, a soft sound was heard. The virus clone's Titan dragon claw pierced into the Blood Clan member's chest. The Blood Clan member looked down. He saw that the dragon claw had completely sunk into his chest. He couldn't help but be stunned. How was this possible? A mere human who had just obtained the bloodline of a vampire. He was just a low-level vampire. And he was already a high-level vampire. How was it possible for him to break through his body? After the shock, there was anger. A few minutes ago, he was just a mere human being, yet he dared to defile his body with his filthy claws. Unforgivable. Unforgivable. In his anger, his figure instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already behind the virus clone. Then, his right hand also turned into a sharp claw. It instantly slashed through the virus clone's body. Whoosh, a soft sound was heard. As blood splattered, the virus clone's body was cut into two. Countless tiny tentacles grew out from the virus clone's wound, wanting to connect the two parts of the body together. Seeing this, the Blood Clan member sneered. "Filthy thing, you still want to revive?" Saying so, his right claw once again reached into the virus clone's wound. The virus clone's blood was flowing out at a speed visible to the naked eye. The virus clone's body also gradually shriveled up. In the end, only a dried corpse with skin and bones was left. Only now did the Blood Clan member's anger seem to have subsided. He once again regained his elegant demeanor. He took out a white handkerchief and wiped the blood off his right hand. His fingers loosened, as if releasing a blood-red butterfly. The blood-stained handkerchief once again fluttered in the wind. He elegantly shook his head and sighed. Low-level humans are too barbaric. Even if they obtained the noble bloodline of a vampire, it still can't make them elegant at all. Barbarism is deeply imprinted in their bones. Saying so, he flapped his wings and floated into the air. His elegance didn't lose its dominance. Then, let me conquer this barbaric land and enlighten these barbaric creatures. At the same time, in the corpse farm of Base C1. Immerse was drinking tea and chatting with Happy. Suddenly, he paused. Happy looked at Immerse with concern with her big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Immerse drank a mouthful of tea and said to Happy, "I have something to do. I have some matters to attend to. I'll be back soon." Happy nodded obediently and gestured. "I'll wait for Brother Emo to come back." Immerse stretched out his hand and gently rubbed Happy's head. Then, he used Dragon's Shadow Step and left Base C1 in a second. When the people in the base saw the 100-meter-tall phantom of a dragon suddenly appear in the sky above the corpse farm, they all lowered their heads respectfully. Immerse traveled 10 kilometers in a second and rushed to the 4 provinces. Previously, he had been letting these clones kill the infected creatures and didn't pay much attention to them. Therefore, when the clone was in danger, he didn't know. However, when the clone died, he could still clearly sense it. In all of Huaxia, other than Emperor Qin, there were very few creatures that could threaten the virus clones. Now that he could easily kill the virus clones, the person who came was definitely not simple. A journey of more than 1,000 kilometers took him less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, he arrived in front of the Leshan giant Buddha nest. Looking at the shriveled corpse of the clone, Immerse didn't feel sad at all. It was just a clone. However, he was slightly unhappy. Dragon consciousness swept over and quickly locked onto a figure more than 20 kilometers away. That guy was wearing a black tuxedo and had a pair of huge bat-like wings on his back. His skin was pale, and his eyes were blood-red. The blood dragon's eye opened, and this guy's attributes quickly appeared in Immerse's mind. Race, vampire, level 6 super mutated, vampire? Immerse was slightly surprised. Chapter 168. Immerse was a little surprised. It seemed that there really were vampires in the world. In his mind, the system's prompt sounded frowny face. Vampires are also humans infected with the vampiric virus. Zombies were creatures infected with the X virus. Zombies were creatures infected with the zombie virus. Vampires were creatures infected with the vampiric virus. Thinking of this, Immerse felt that he seemed to have vaguely grasped something. At the same time, the vampire 20 kilometers away originally planned to go to the nearby human base. But at this moment, he suddenly felt that there was a human approaching the place where he had just killed the inferior human. This was the blood sensing unique to vampires. In the places they had just passed, they would leave behind the blood scent unique to vampires. It was similar to the scent left behind by humans. Through this blood scent, they could sense other creatures that appeared within the range of the blood scent. The vampire couldn't help but pause. Could it be that the inferior human had been resurrected? It was necessary to go back and check. Thinking of this, he turned around and flew toward the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha. A moment later, he arrived above the Leshan giant Buddha. When he saw the human in front of the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha, he couldn't help but be surprised. The shriveled corpse on the ground meant that the inferior human had not been resurrected. But why did this newly arrived human look almost exactly the same as the inferior human from before? In his confusion, he once again looked at the human in front of him mockingly like before. He could feel that the human in front of him should be very strong. But in his experience, no matter how strong a human was, there was a limit. On his way here from the west, the strongest human he had encountered was only a level 8 hunter. Not to mention a level 8 hunter, even a level 10 hunter was a complete noob in front of him. So when he looked at Immerse, he still had a condescending expression. He said, "I'll give you a chance to serve the noble vampires. If you take it, you'll live. If you don't take this opportunity." He pointed at the shriveled corpse next to Immerse. "Die." However, as soon as he finished speaking, his gaze suddenly froze. The next moment, boom, he was instantly smashed into the river by a huge force. Plop, the blood-red river water rose a blood wave more than 50 meters high. A huge blood pit instantly appeared in the river water. Shockwaves quickly spread out around the blood pit. Under the terrifying impact of the shockwave, the 100-meter-wide river was directly cut off. When he looked at the center of the river again, the Blood Clan member had long since disappeared from the 100-meter-wide crater. The speed that he was so proud of was not even displayed in front of Immerse before he died. Even when he died, he didn't understand how he died. In the next moment, the severed river water gushed madly into the center of the hole. With a loud boom, the river closed up again. Immerse, on the other hand, was looking through the memories of the Blood Clan member that he had just plundered. It turned out that the Blood Clan virus had already existed thousands of years ago. Humans who had been infected by the blood breed virus would become different from normal humans and become members of the blood breed, also known as vampires. However, the vampires back then weren't that strong. If they encountered humans armed with firearms, they would have no choice but to retreat. Therefore, they could only hide in the darkness. This was also the reason why there were only legends about vampires in the world, but no evidence of their existence could be found. They originally wanted to wait for the Blood Clan to become stronger before making a comeback. However, they didn't expect humans' firearms to become stronger and stronger, so they could only hide. Until the end of the world, when the virus X swept across the world. In the end, the firearms of the humans were all ineffective, and the Blood Clan reappeared. They also found out that after the virus X and their blood breed virus fused, their abilities became stronger and their strength increased faster. At the same time, their blood breed virus could also assimilate zombies and infected creatures. Now, after nearly 30 years of development, the Blood Clan had become the strongest existence in the Western world. The total number of Blood Clan members had reached more than 1 billion. It wouldn't be long before the entire Western world was completely ruled by the Blood Clan. At the same time, he also found some useful information from the Blood Clan members' memories. Among all the Blood Clan members, the strongest existence was only level 10 super mutated Blood Clan members. They were equivalent to level 10 super mutated zombies and level 10 great hunters. It seemed that due to some kind of restriction, no matter how strong the creatures in the world were, there was a limit. And this limit was level 10 super mutated zombies. After reaching level 10 super mutated zombies, it seemed that no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't break through this limit. Level 10 super mutated zombies were like this. Level 10 super mutated Blood Clan members were like this. Seeing this, Immerse's heart moved slightly. With his current strength, it wouldn't be a problem to crush a level 10 super mutated zombie. If he leveled up 1 or 2 more levels, it wouldn't be a problem to have more level 10 super mutated zombies. After he used up most of his evolution points and leveled up a few more times, he would go to the west and meet the Blood Clan members. At this time, killing this Blood Clan member should be considered a special event. Immerse said in his mind, "System, special event sign in." The system's voice sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in event, kill Blood Clan member, sign in reward, blood aura sense. Immerse checked this skill in his mind frowny face blood aura sense, passive skill. Leave a trace of blood aura in the places he passed by. Any creature that comes within 100 kilometers of the blood aura can clearly sense it. Immerse's blood aura sense was much stronger than the blood aura sense of ordinary Blood Clan members. The blood aura left by ordinary Blood Clan members could only last for 1 to 3 days. However, the blood aura left by Immerse could last for about a month. Moreover, the blood aura sense of ordinary Blood Clan members only had a radius of about 10 kilometers. Immerse's blood aura sense, however, had a radius of 100 kilometers. Then, Immerse glanced at the Leshan giant Buddha that had turned into ruins and said, "System, sign in at a special location." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in location, Blood Buddha Hive, sign in reward, Blood Buddha Avatar, Blood Handprint. Immerse checked the 2 rewards in his mind again. The essence of the Blood Buddha Avatar was similar to the virus Avatar. It was just that one looked exactly like Immerse. The other appearance was in the form of a huge Blood Buddha. The Blood Handprint was used in conjunction with the Blood Buddha Avatar. The Blood Buddha Avatar would strike with a blood palm that fell from the sky. The blood palm had an extremely strong restraining effect on any zombie, or Blood Clan member. It seemed that this avatar and skill were more mysterious, but in fact, they were all virus abilities. After signing in, Immerse tapped his foot lightly and disappeared from the spot. Only a 100-meter-tall dragon phantom was left. Immerse turned around and took a glance at the huge dragon's shadow 10 kilometers away. He sighed in his heart, this dragon's shadow step is powerful, but it's a little too ostentatious. Chapter 169. After Immerse signed in at the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha, he left the place. At the same time as he left, in America, San Francisco base. This used to be one of the 5 bases of America. But now, this place had been occupied by the blood breeds. The 150,000 humans in the base had all been infected and turned into blood breeds. In the president's office of the once world-famous Stanford University. It was night time. Classical music was playing in the office. An elegant blood breed in a suit was holding a book called The Silence of the Lambs and reading it under the moonlight. He was the strongest existence in the base and also the ancestor of the Smith family. He was now a level 10 super mutant blood breed. Reading books was one of his hobbies. Among all the books, his favorite was The Silence of the Lambs. After a while, he closed the book. His blood-red eyes looked at the moon in the night sky outside the window and sighed. Dr. Hannibal is definitely the most elegant cannibal among the inferior humans. If there is such a human in reality, he will definitely become the blood breed with the most potential. It was also at this moment that his elegant face suddenly frowned slightly. As the ancestor of the Smith family, all the members of the Smith family had his blood breed blood flowing in them. He could sense the death of any member of his family. Just now, he sensed that a great-grandson he sent to the east to investigate the situation had died. Someone dared to hurt the blood breeds of the Smith family. Outrageous. But even in his anger, he tried to maintain his elegance. He turned to the door, restrained the anger in his voice, and said, "Men." Soon, a middle-aged blood breed with an aquiline nose came in. He gave a medieval salute to Smith. Then he asked respectfully, "Great-grandfather, what can I do for you?" Smith asked, "Have you reached level 8? The aquiline nodded. "Yes, great-grandfather, I just broke through to level 8 super mutant blood breed yesterday. Smith nodded and said angrily but elegantly, the clansmen I sent to the east were killed. Take 50 clansmen with you and investigate. If it's necessary, kill them all. The Aquiline nodded immediately. Yes, great-grandfather. Smith then added, that's right. You'd better bring all the strong mutants in the clan. After investigating this matter, we'll sweep through the entire East. All of their infected creatures, including those lowly humans, must submit to the Smith family. The eagle-nosed vampire puffed out his chest and raised his head, replying confidently. Please rest assured, great-grandfather. Within 10 days, the entire East will be the backyard of our Smith family. As he spoke, he once again bowed respectfully in the Middle Ages. Only then did he leave. The trace of anger on Smith's face had completely disappeared. Elegance once again took over his face. His hand caressed the silence of the lambs on the table, imitating Hannibal's tone, and said with dignity and elegance, someone once tried to investigate me. So I ate his liver with some broad beans and delicious red wine. As he spoke, he imitated Hannibal's voice. Hiss, hiss, hiss. 2 days later. China, Base C1. Immerse woke up, yawned, and stretched. After signing in for the past few days, he clearly felt that he would be able to level up again after signing in for another 10 days at most. He switched his consciousness into the body of the Sea Dragon clone. He saw that the Sea Dragon clone was now a level 4 mutant beast. Its body length had already reached 14 meters. Its dragons had not reached level 1 long Nianshi. But compared to ordinary level 10 psychokinesis, it was much stronger. A level 4 mutant beast coupled with a dragon's will that surpassed level 10 psychokinesis allowed it to run rampant in the Yellow River Basin. As long as it didn't encounter a super mutant beast, it was invincible. However, after being promoted to a strong mutant beast, its speed of improvement had obviously slowed down. Because in the past few days, it had devoured most of the slightly stronger mutant beasts in the Yellow River Basin. It didn't dare to devour the remaining powerful mutant beasts. The weak mutant beasts wouldn't be of much use after devouring them. Immerse was thinking. After this period of free time, he would try to control it to clean up the entire Yellow River Basin. Let it become the overlord of the Yellow River Basin. And in the past 2 days, many people in the base had made breakthroughs in their strength. The hunters in the base had increased to more than 50 people. Once again, they had returned to the peak level of the zombie hunting group. After a rough calculation, more than 23,000 of the more than 100,000 people in the base had become corpse hunters or hunter masters. Psychokinesis had also reached more than 600 people. This number was unimaginable in the past. Moreover, there were basically no infected creatures outside the base now. They began to send out zombie hunting groups to explore further areas around the base. They were searching for resources and planning to find a suitable place outside the base to cultivate crops. And all of this was thanks to Immerse. Although they didn't know what Mr. Immo had done, it was obvious that they had benefited greatly from it. Therefore, everyone was very grateful to Immerse. It was also on this day that Immerse and Happy took a walk in the base after finishing their meal. But at this moment, he suddenly sensed something. He sensed with his blood chi that a group of about 300 people had arrived near the Leshan giant Buddha ruins in the 4 provinces. Immerse's blood chi could directly sense the strength of these people. Most of these 300 people were super mutant vampires. The only 2 super mutant vampires were level 8 and level 3. Immerse secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, these guys had been in the West before. If they had come to the East earlier, they would have definitely swept through the entire East. But now... Haha. However, with Immerse's caution, even if his strength was far superior to these people, he still had to let his clones test them first. After all, he had just obtained the blood chi, and he still didn't trust this skill very much. Moreover, what if these guys had some trump cards? For example, on the surface, he was a level 6 great hunter, but he could kill a level 10 super mutant zombie. Therefore, he had to be cautious. Survival was the king's way. Thinking of this, he moved his mind. All 10 virus clones in Huaxia rushed to the 4 provinces. The 300 or so vampires had already discovered base C7, which was not far from Leshan. The leader of the vampires gave an order. Go to base C7 and interrogate those inferior humans. Let's see what dared to kill the members of the Smith family. When the vampires received the order, they immediately spread their wings and flew in the direction of base C7. At the same time, not far from base C7, more than a dozen hunters were exploring the Leshan giant Buddha ruins. A few days ago, they heard a roar coming from here. Today, they specially came to investigate. Chapter 170. Near the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha, more than 300 blood breeds were planning to fly to base C7. But at this moment, they realized that not far below, there was a group of humans heading towards them. The leading hawk-nosed blood breed immediately waved his hand. The group of blood breeds was about to land on the ground. But at this moment, the hawk-nosed blood breed suddenly raised his hand and stopped the blood breeds. He turned to look towards the north. In the wilderness, a figure was rushing towards them at a speed of 1,000 meters per second. The hawk-nosed blue blood breed was slightly startled. The other blood breeds were also a little surprised. What a fast speed! The hawk-nosed youth said to a level 10 mutant blood breed next to him. This human is not simple. He might be the murderer. Capture him. The level 10 mutant blood breed nodded. Yes. Then he retracted his wings and flew down. He was about to reach Immerse's virus clone. However, Immerse's virus clone only used telekinesis to sweep past him. Rip, the level 10 mutant blood breed was instantly torn in half. This scene caused shock to appear on the pale faces of the 300-plus blood clan members in the sky. Oh no, he's psychokinesis. I'm afraid he's already level 10. Some blood breeds said in panic. They had seen level 10 psychokinesis among humans before. He fought against 2 level 1 mutant blood breeds with his own strength. This showed how powerful level 10 psychokinesis was. Thinking of this, the hawk-nosed blood breed ordered the level 3 mutant blood breed next to him. This lowly human dared to kill the Smith breeds. His crime is unforgivable. Kill him for me. The level 3 mutant blood breed replied, yes. He immediately flew down. At this moment, a black spear condensed in the virus clone's right hand. Sky Regicide Dragon Spear. Then with a roar, he threw it at the level 3 mutant blood breed. Whoosh, the black dragon spear shone with a metallic luster under the sunlight. It streaked across the sky like a rainbow. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Poof! It instantly pierced through the level 3 mutant blood breed's mouth. The huge inertia caused the level 3 super mutant blood clan member to fly back 100 meters. Finally, with a ding sound, it was nailed to the cliff behind. 2/3 of the entire front part of the dragon spear sank into the head of the level 3 super variant zombie and the cliff. Only 1/3 of it was left, more than a meter out of his mouth. His body was nailed to the cliff. As a gust of wind blew, it swayed left and right like a pendulum. All the members of the blood clan gasped when they saw this. How was this possible? How could a lowly human be so powerful? They had never met such a human when they were roaming the Americas. This was especially true for the eagle-nosed leader of the blood race. He was both shocked and furious. His great-grandfather had sent him to the east to investigate the murderer. Along the way, they would conquer the entire east. They had just arrived, and they had already lost a level 3 blood breed. How could they conquer the east? Shocked and furious, his figure flashed and instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already behind the virus clone. The next moment, the claws on his wings extended and stabbed into the virus clone's back. Rip, the sound of cloth being torn could be heard. The virus clone was directly torn in half. His pale face revealed a hint of ferocity. "Lowly human, lowly species, how dare you provoke the noble Blood Clan?" The rest of the Blood Clan heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. The eagle-nosed blood race glanced at all his clansmen and said, "Without a doubt, this human is the murderer of my clansmen. Now that the murderer is dead, we will start by conquering this ancient country and conquer the entire Asia." The rest of the Blood Clan lowered their heads, yes. At the same time, on the mountain top far away, the hunters saw this scene and were all shocked. These guys seemed to be some Western mutated creatures. Was the person they just killed a mysterious elite? A few days ago, I saw the mysterious elite destroy a virus hive from afar. That must be the mysterious elite. At this point, everyone's heart was shrouded in a haze. The mysterious elite was the strongest human they had ever seen. They had seen the mysterious elite cleaning up infected creatures in the vicinity many times. And now, the mysterious elite had been killed. And he was killed in an instant. How strong were these people from the west? At this moment, the leader saw the direction the Blood Clan was flying in and his face suddenly changed. "Oh no, they are coming towards us. Hide quickly." But at this moment, another human figure suddenly appeared in the sky without any warning. He blocked all the Blood Clan. This figure was exactly the same as the mysterious elite from before. The only difference was that he was wearing different clothes. The Blood Clan were all stunned. Why did this person look exactly the same as the human from before? Twins? Because he had seen the strength of the human just now, even the eagle-nosed Blood Clan member didn't dare to be careless now. "Lowly human, lowly species. How dare you offend the noble Blood Clan?" Before he finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already behind Immerse. A pair of sharp claws on his wings had already reached out. However, at this moment, his face suddenly changed dramatically. Because he saw that the human had turned around without him knowing. He seemed to be waiting for him. How was this possible? Although the Blood Clan's flying speed wasn't very fast, their explosive speed was definitely incomparable to other creatures. But now, this human could actually catch up with his speed? But at this moment, he didn't have time to think too much. His sharp claws suddenly reached out and directly pierced towards Immerse's chest. At this moment, a blood-red long saber appeared in Immerse's hand. The long saber was streamlined and very high-tech. Dark Ice Devil Slaying Saber. When the Blood Clan member's sharp claws reached in front of him, the Dark Ice Devil Slaying Saber in his hand gently slashed. Whoosh whoosh, two soft sounds. The pair of sharp claws was instantly cut off. Seeing this, the eagle-nosed Blood Clan member was shocked. He hurriedly wanted to retreat. But there was no time to retreat. The surface of his body was covered by a thick layer of ice. At the same time, this layer of ice continued to spread in all directions. Within a radius of 1 kilometer, the ground, trees, stones, and river were all covered by a thick layer of ice. Even the bodies of the more than 300 Blood Clan members in the sky were covered by a layer of ice almost instantaneously. They were like more than 300 ice sculptures. These more than 300 ice sculptures fell directly from a height of 100 meters. They smashed onto the ground with a thud. And the layer of ice on their bodies was extremely strong. Even if they fell from a height of 100 meters, the ice didn't break. They were still complete ice sculptures. As for the eagle-nosed Blood Clan member, not only was his outer appearance frozen into an ice sculpture, his body was also constantly being corroded by strong acid. His blood-red eyes were filled with endless fear. But he couldn't move at all. Chapter 171. The mystical Ice Devil Slayer only needed one slash. And it was only on the claw of the level 8 super mutant vampire. As a result, the area within a 1 kilometer radius was instantly frozen. The hawk-nosed vampire who was slashed naturally couldn't escape death. What surprised Immerse was that the rest of the vampires were all frozen as well. And after being frozen, the cold air penetrated into their bones. Their blood solidified at an extremely fast speed, and their bones became extremely fragile under the ultra-low temperature of the ice. Immerse's dragon sense swept across. Whoosh, the sound of ice breaking was heard. The 300 ice sculptures all shattered at the same time. They shattered into blood-colored ice pieces on the ground. On the mountain top in the distance, the human hunters saw this scene and were all surprised and happy. Mysterious powerhouse, this is the real mysterious powerhouse. One-hit kill. A real one-hit kill. That guy with wings should be a super mutant zombie. But he was killed by the mysterious powerhouse in one hit. How strong is he? I'm more concerned about the one who died before. Could it be the clone of the mysterious powerhouse? Well, it's possible. I heard that the mysterious powerhouse is a human from the C1 base. Maybe they used the genes of the mysterious powerhouse to clone some clones. At this time, Immerse looked at the mystical ice devil slayer in his hand. This blade did have a strong restraining effect on vampires. Vampires also had an extremely strong self-healing ability. But the extremely cold air released by the mystical ice devil slayer could make their cells completely lose their vitality. In other words, it could directly kill their cells. This way, their self-healing ability wouldn't be of use. Putting away the mystical ice devil slayer, Immerse checked the memories of the few vampires that he had just plundered in his mind. He had a rough understanding of the Smith family's strength. There were more than 30 super mutants. There were 2 level 10 super mutants. There were more than 30,000 below super mutants. Other than that, under their rule, all the zombies in San Francisco added up to more than 8 million. No wonder they wanted to sweep the East. Normally, with such strength, it wouldn't be a problem to sweep the East. But unfortunately, they met Immerse. There was a saying, those who offend my Debong will be punished no matter how far away they are. Since they had repeatedly invaded, then it was necessary to pay them a visit. Clean them up from the roots. However, before going to America, Immerse planned to reach level 7 first. Although Immerse was at level 6, he had a 90% chance of wiping out the Smith family. However, if he wasn't 100% sure, he wouldn't easily make a move. Moreover, Immerse knew from the memories of that hook-nosed vampire that the Smiths weren't the only vampire clan. The ancestor of the blood race was actually Count Dracula. As for the blood clan that Count Dracula had transformed into, there were as many as 13 families. These 13 families now ruled almost 2/3 of the Western world. If Immerse wanted to exterminate the Smith family, he would become the enemy of all vampires. Therefore, it would be good if he could improve his strength before going to the west. Thinking of this, a pair of blood dragon wings appeared on his back. After a slight tremor, he flew toward base C1. At the same time, in America's San Francisco base, Stanford University, the president's office. Amidst the elegant classical music, the ancestor of the Smith family was carefully reading the Silence of the Lambs. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, he exuded an elegant temperament. However, at a certain moment, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the night sky in the east. There was a trace of murderous intent between his brows. He could clearly sense that the 300 or so members of the Smith family that he had sent had all been killed. One was a level 8 super mutant, and the other was a level 3 super mutant. They had more than 300 strong mutant vampires. He had thought that such a force could easily wipe out the barren land in the east. However, he didn't expect that the 300 or so people would be wiped out as soon as they arrived in the east. Preposterous. How preposterous. Even someone as elegant as him couldn't hide the anger in his heart at this moment. Men. Call all the vampires back. In 10 days, I will wipe out the barren land in Asia. 9 days later, at night. Immerse switched his consciousness into the body of the sea dragon clone. At this time, the sea dragon clone had already reached 15 meters. Its level had risen to level 5 super mutant. Its telekinesis had also risen to level 5. In fact, at the beginning, Immerse wanted to directly let it use the dragon mind. However, after using it a few times, he found that the dragon mind was still too powerful and overbearing. With the strength of its brain cells, it couldn't withstand the overbearing dragon mind at all. Every time the dragon mind attacked, the sea dragon clone would wither for a while. Immerse had also tried to let it take brain cell enhancers. However, for some reason, the brain cell enhancers had little effect on it. Therefore, he could only let it use its telekinesis for the time being. After it became a super mutant, it might be able to use the dragon mind. A level 5 super mutant coupled with level 5 telekinesis. As long as it wasn't too stubborn to fight a super mutant, it would be very safe in the entire Yellow River. Immerse thought to himself that after returning from the west, he would seize the time to raise its level. After all, the upper limit of the sea dragon clone was a level higher than his own body. A moment later, his consciousness switched back to his body. Looking at the time, it was already 11:30 at night. It seemed that nothing special would happen today. He said in his mind, "System, specify the bloodline modification liquid and double the sign-in." The system replied instantly as usual, frowny face, sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, 2,000 drops of Titan Dragon bloodline modification liquid. Soon, 2,000 small bottles appeared in his system backpack. Immerse took out 100 bottles each time. With a thought, the dragon mind opened these 100 bottles. With another thought, the 100 drops of modification liquid condensed into a water ball the size of an egg. He swallowed it in one gulp. And so it went back and forth. When he finished swallowing all 2,000 drops of modification liquid, the heat in his body surged again. In 5 minutes, his body temperature had reached its limit. As the heat flowed through his body, he could use his draconic telekinesis to detect where the heat flowed through. His cells became stronger once again. The capacity inside also increased. Now, every upgrade was to prepare for the realm after the Great Hunter realm. After the Great Hunter realm, he would be able to use energy in the true sense. And energy was usually stored in every cell in the body. Therefore, the stronger the cells were now, the more capacity they would have. After reaching that realm in the future, the more energy there would be in the body. Imagine, at the same level, your energy was more than 10 times or even dozens of times more than that of others. Wouldn't you be able to easily defeat your opponent? Chapter 172. During the process of upgrading, Immerse suddenly had an idea. Since his cells would have to withstand energy in the future, did that mean that he could use the energy on his back to temper his cells now? This way, when he reached that level in the future, his cells would be able to accept that energy with ease. At the same time, he would be more familiar with energy. Thinking of this, he tried to transfer the energy he had obtained from the plague dragon's ruins to his entire body. However, he did not have a way to transfer the energy at all. Naturally, it was impossible. However, a moment later, he suddenly thought of whether he could use the dragon's will to forcefully transfer the energy to other cells in his body. In the end, he tried it and it really worked. He immediately used the dragon's will to transfer all the energy on his back to all the cells in his body. In fact, telekinesis was a mental ability and had nothing to do with energy. Normal telekinesis masters couldn't use telekinesis to move energy. However, the dragon's will could. The dragon's will was a unique telekinesis of the dragon race. This kind of telekinesis was a mixture of spirit and energy. It was a special kind of spirit energy. Therefore, he could use the dragon's will to transfer energy. This blood-red energy was transferred to all the cells in Immerse's body. His cells suddenly swelled. It was as if they were about to explode in an instant. Fortunately, his cells had been modified by the modification liquid and had far exceeded the strength of human cells. Therefore, although his skin was red and seemed like it could explode at any time, he was still barely able to withstand this energy. This process only lasted for a minute before Immerse felt that he could no longer withstand it. He could only hurriedly transfer all the energy back to the shoulder blades on his back. This energy seemed to only be obedient when it was in the shoulder blades. Phew, he let out a long breath. Immerse used the dragon's will to explore every cell in his body. He could clearly feel that every cell was several times stronger than before. Their capacity was also several times larger than before. He could not help but feel happy. So this really worked. If he had known earlier, he would have used this energy to temper his body long ago. In fact, Immerse was still thinking too much. Before he reached level 7, his body could not withstand the impact of that huge energy. Now that he had just reached level 7, it was just right to temper his cells. At this moment, Immerse's body temperature returned to normal. He checked the attribute interface in his mind. Name, Immerse, level 7 Great Hunter, level 2 Long Nian Shi, evolution direction, Titan Dragon. He had finally become a level 7 Great Hunter. At level 7, he was confident that he could defeat any level 10 Great Hunter or level 10 super mutated creature. Since he had leveled up, he should go to San Francisco tomorrow. The next morning, when Immerse ate breakfast, he habitually used the blood dragon's eyes to observe Happy. Happy's attributes appeared in his mind. Species, human, level oracle, unawakened, ability, unknown. Immerse's eyes lit up. Finally, there was one less question mark. Happy was only a question mark away from truly awakening to the power of a prophet. Happy saw that Immerse seemed to be looking at her lecherously. She couldn't help but blush and lower her head. His heart was pounding like a crazy rabbit. Immerse loved to see Happy's bashful expression. He looked at it even more seriously. Happy occasionally raised her head and saw that Immerse's gaze seemed to be even more lecherous. She couldn't help but feel her heart beat faster. Immerse couldn't help but laugh. After breakfast, Immerse told Happy that he had to go out for a while. Happy made a sign. Go early and come back early. Immerse nodded, then used Dragon's Shadow Steps and ran towards San Francisco. It was more than 10,000 kilometers away. If he used Dragon's Shadow Steps, he would only need to take more than 1,000 steps. But because there was a large part of the journey in the middle, he had to cross the sea. Therefore, Immerse could only fly most of the time. He traveled 1,000 meters per second, and there was a delay of a few minutes. In the end, it took him more than 20 minutes to reach the sky above San Francisco. Looking down from here, he saw that the entire San Francisco was red. There were actually 5 mother nests in San Francisco. Thousands of blood-red vines spread out from the 5 mother nests. These blood-colored vines crawled all over the buildings, all the streets, the broken lampposts, and the overturned cars. They almost occupied the entire city. Along with the blood-red vines, zombies also occupied the entire city. Before the apocalypse, there were only more than 800,000 people in San Francisco. But the nearby Bay Area had more than 6 million people. When the vampires attacked the San Francisco base, the 6 million infected zombies also focused on attacking the San Francisco base. Now, the vampires had occupied the San Francisco base. More than 8 million zombies were wandering around the San Francisco base. The Golden Gate Bridge, which had been broken countless times in countless movies and TV shows, was really broken now. There were countless blood-red vines hanging down from it. In the setting sun, the blood-red vines looked like thousands of blood snakes, sticking their heads under the bridge to drink water. It looked exceptionally strange. On the shore of the strait under the bridge, a rusty aircraft carrier lay diagonally on the shore. It was like an old man who didn't have much time left, lying on a recliner at the door, feeling sad and self-pity at the setting sun. In the city, collapsed buildings could occasionally be seen. What used to be the walls of the base were now nothing but rubble. Immerse looked down with the blood dragon's eye. He saw that the entire city was shrouded in an extremely dense corpse aura. In this corpse aura, he could also see an even denser and blood-red blood aura. Obviously, this blood aura was emitted by the vampires. For any other human, this city was hell. But for Immerse, it was just another place where evolution points gathered. He glanced at the evolution points in his mind. Now, his evolution points had reached 1 billion. After destroying all the infected creatures in this city, his evolution points should be able to break through 8 billion. At the same time, in this city, the only place that was not covered by the Sanguisurincus was the former Stanford University. This place was still covered by green plants. At this time, in the open space in front of the principal's office at Stanford University, there were more than 30,000 members of the blood race standing there silently. Each of them had a pair of bat-like wings. Their faces were pale, and their eyes were blood-red. In the sky in front of them, 2 vampires flapped their wings and floated in the air. These 2 vampires were both level 10 super-mutated vampires. One of them was the ancestor of the Smith family. The other was his wife. The ancestor of the Smith family sized up the 30,000 vampires below with his blood-red eyes. He let out a half-human, half-bat voice from his throat. In the wilderness to the east, there are inferior humans who dare to hurt the people of the Smith family. Their dirty claws cut open the noble bodies of the vampires. Their despicable actions tarnish the noble souls of the vampires. They dare to offend the vampires, offend the Smith family. Our response is only one word: all the 30,000 vampires of the Smith family had blood-red eyes and pale faces. They raised their right arms and shouted in unison, "Kill!" Chapter 173. The Smith family had more than 30,000 clansmen. Among these clansmen, the weakest had already reached level 5 strong mutant vampire. There were more than 30 super mutant vampires. The 2 strongest among them had already reached level 10 super mutant. If the human world knew that there was such a force, they would probably be in despair. With such a huge force, there was no need to think about when the human civilization could be rebuilt. Thinking about the current number of humans, how they could survive was the most important thing. Under the instigation of Elder Smith, the 30,000 vampires were furious. Despicable low-class humans, how dare they use their dirty claws to blaspheme the noble bodies and souls of the vampires? Kill them. The low-class species in the wilderness have no civilization to speak of. To deal with such species, we can only use violence to curb violence. The vampires will conquer the entire world. In the sky above San Francisco, Immerse's dragons will detected this. There was not a trace of emotion in her cold eyes. You have no chance to kill your way to the east. Because I'm here. In the next moment, Immerse's dragons will moved. In the dilapidated city of San Francisco. On the road. A wandering zombie's body suddenly froze. Then, its head actually rolled down to the ground. The skin and flesh on its body began to fall off. Then, its internal organs and bones. In the end, its body was like melted chocolate, forming a sticky mass of flesh and blood. Its head saw its body turn into flesh and blood with its own eyes and instinctively struggled to escape. Roar, its mouth was also constantly letting out fearful roars. But without arms and legs, how could a head run? Could it use its teeth to open and close and support its head to escape? A moment later, its head was also like melted chocolate. It gradually turned into a mass of flesh and blood and merged with its body. At the same time, around this zombie. On the streets, in the cars, in the shopping mall, in the amusement park. Like it, all the other zombies began to melt. Not far away, a strong mutated zombie saw this scene. Its eyes were filled with endless fear. Just think about it, how strange and terrifying would it be if everyone around him suddenly melted like chocolate? In its fear, the strong mutated zombie quickly jumped and fled into the distance. However, when it landed on the ground, it smashed heavily into the ground. He rolled another 20 meters before finally coming to a stop. It quickly sat up and looked at Shuangzi. He saw that his feet had already melted. Then, its legs and hands melted as well. He screamed in terror. No. However, this roar only came out halfway before it abruptly stopped. Because even his neck had melted. At the same time, the same scene was happening in every corner of the city. Among the more than 8 million zombies, except for the super-mutated zombies, the rest were all melting into a mass of flesh and blood. Then, the flesh began to wriggle and wriggle faster and faster. Looking down from the sky, one could see that all the flesh and blood in the city were on the streets, gathering in the direction of a park. When those super-mutant zombies saw this scene, they were all terrified. The scene before their eyes had completely exceeded their understanding. They had no idea what was going on. They could only flee in all directions, trying to avoid this sudden disaster and prevent their bodies from melting. The wriggling flesh and blood on the street eventually gathered and took shape in the park. First, a pair of huge feet condensed. Then, a pair of feet and legs condensed on this pair of feet. Then, an upper body slowly condensed. In Stanford University, Ancestor Smith was passionately motivating the people before the war. At this moment, a vampire suddenly discovered that in the city behind Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a huge blood-colored figure was slowly condensing and taking shape in the distance. The vampire's heart skipped a beat as he pointed in that direction. What's that? The other vampires also saw the huge figure. All of them had shocked expressions on their faces. When Ancestor Smith saw that a vampire dared to disrupt his speech, a trace of anger flashed across his brows. However, because he had to maintain an elegant posture, this trace of anger quickly disappeared. He reminded. When others speak, it's best to listen carefully. This is respect for others and also a sign of education. At the same time, it's also a necessary quality to become an elegant vampire. In the past, when Ancestor Smith reminded these vampires, they would immediately realize that they had made a big mistake. They would apologize to him immediately. However, this time, not only did these vampire disciples not apologize, but even more of them started to make a ruckus. Even more anger flashed across Ancestor Smith's brows. He was about to reprimand these disciples. As an elegant vampire, no matter what happened, they shouldn't be so noisy. However, at this moment, his wife beside him whispered, "Dear, something happened." Hearing this, Smith turned around. He followed his wife's gaze. When he saw it, his heart couldn't help but tremble. He saw that between the skyscrapers in the distance, a huge blood-red body was slowly condensing and taking shape. At this moment, the entire body had already condensed and formed, leaving only half of the head. A moment later, the huge head had also condensed and formed. Could it be that those dirty zombies have mutated into giant zombies? No, it doesn't look like a zombie. I think I've seen it somewhere before, but I can't tell where. A trace of inexplicable fear appeared in the hearts of the vampire disciples. In the face of the unknown, humans would feel fear. Similarly, bloodstains would also cause fear. Ancestor Smith had read a lot of books, so he recognized it at a glance. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Buddha." That's right, this was a Buddha. It was almost identical to the Leshan Great Buddha. Its legs were bent, and it was sitting on a foundation made of flesh and blood. Its expression was serene and calm. Its eyes were lowered, looking down at all living beings. However, this Buddha was more than 10 times taller than the Leshan Great Buddha. It was more than 1,000 meters tall. And the Buddha's body was blood red. The entire Buddha's body seemed to be emitting a vast demonic aura. It was gloomy and filled with demonic aura. Even these vampires didn't seem to dare to look directly at it. Buddha was originally a symbol of light and majesty. But now, this blood Buddha was emitting a demonic aura that even the vampires didn't dare to look directly at. With this demonic aura, it intimidated all demons. All the vampires below the super mutation level were terrified when they saw this huge blood Buddha. They couldn't summon the slightest thought of resisting at all. Even the super mutated vampires only had one thought when they saw this huge blood Buddha. Run. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were level 10 super mutated vampires. They were the most powerful beings in the entire city. Their feelings were especially obvious. Chapter 174. The huge blood Buddha not only made all the vampires panic. Even the two strongest existences of the vampires, the level 10 super mutated vampires, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, were terrified. As level 10 super mutated vampires, they felt this blood Buddha more clearly than the other vampires. It was like a primary school student compared to a boxing champion. Although he knew that this boxing champion was very powerful, he could not personally experience how terrifying this boxing champion was. And a boxer who had really learned boxing for a few days, when facing the boxing champion, would feel far more real than a child, and he would be more aware of the boxing champion's terrifying strength. At this moment, the 1,000-meter-tall blood Buddha with monstrous demonic aura slowly moved. It slowly raised its right hand. Then, it slowly pressed towards the ground. At the same time, the flesh and blood on the blood Buddha's body kept gathering towards the giant palm. In the beginning, the giant palm was only more than 100 meters wide and less than 200 meters long. But as the flesh and blood on its body kept gathering on the giant palm, the Buddha's palm began to rapidly grow longer, wider, and thicker. Its length changed from more than 100 meters to 200 meters. 400 meters, 800 meters, in the end, all the flesh and blood on the blood Buddha's body merged into the giant palm. The length of the giant palm actually reached 5,000 meters. Its width was also 3,000 meters. The huge blood-red palm covered 1/3 of the sky in San Francisco. Then, the blood-red palm accelerated. From a height of 500 meters, it suddenly slapped down. In Stanford University, which was covered by the blood palm, the 30,000 members of the blood race were terrified. They wanted to escape. But they found that they couldn't even move their feet. The vampires above the super mutation wanted to display the speed that they were most proud of. But when the huge blood palm slapped down, they found that they seemed to be moving in thick honey. It was almost impossible to move an inch. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were the fastest to react. When the blood palm was still in the process of condensing, they had already turned around and fled. However, at this moment, when the blood palm was condensed, their speed also suddenly decreased. Ancestor Smith raised his head and looked at the huge blood palm. The palm lines on the blood palm were like ravines. It pressed down on him. At this moment, Smith could no longer maintain his elegance. Who said that one had to maintain elegance in the face of pressure? It was pure nonsense. To be able to maintain grace in the face of death was definitely a lunatic, a pervert. Smith, on the other hand, was a normal vampire. The next moment. Boom! The gigantic bloody palm that was 5,000 meters long slammed heavily onto the ground. The earth shook violently. All the skyscrapers in the city collapsed under the violent shaking. Around the giant palm, shockwaves swept across everything on the ground and spread out in all directions. Abandoned cars were sent flying. Abandoned phone booths were also uprooted. The debris of the collapsing building was also swept away by the shockwave and flew into the distance. The shockwave was like a tsunami. In just a few seconds, it swept through the entire city. At the edge of the city, when the shockwave swept over, the Golden Gate Strait stirred up huge waves. The worn-out aircraft carrier was directly swept to the mountainside on the opposite shore by the huge wave. Then it rolled along the hillside. With a loud splash, he fell into the Golden Gate Strait. Huge waves were created. The Golden Gate Bridge, which was already broken, creaked and groaned in the shock wave. It twisted and fell into the sea. After a full 5 minutes, the shockwave tsunami slowly disappeared. Then, he looked at the city shrouded in smoke and dust. It was as if it had just experienced a meteorite impact. The entire city had been razed to the ground. All that was left of the 5 mother nests were broken walls and dilapidated walls. Just the aftermath of the bloody palm destroyed the 5 mother nests and the super mutated zombies in the 5 mother nests. All the Sanguisurincus in the city were swept away by the shockwave. The blood-red plants had also completely disappeared. The blood-red walls were completely destroyed. The blood-red ground seemed to have been washed away. The entire city was not blood-red at all at this time. The blood-red giant palm was condensed from the flesh and blood of the infected body. It should have generated a stronger infection body. However, the truth was that the blood-red giant palm slammed down. It killed all the demons and cleansed the universe. The entire world was quiet, looking at Stanford University again. At this time, there was no trace of Stanford University. There was only a huge palm print that was 5 kilometers long, 3 kilometers wide, and 5 meters deep left there. And this huge palm print was blood red in color. All the red color in San Francisco had retreated. Only this huge palm print was left, as red as blood. If I become a demon, there will be no demons in the world. Sweeping across the 8 wastelands, swallowing the 6 directions. This was the Blood Buddha clone, the realm of the blood palm. In the blood palm, the 30,000 vampires had long disappeared. Not even their flesh was left. The only thing left were 2 broken heads. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. At this time, the heads of the couple were badly mutilated. Their skulls could be seen directly. But their eyes still barely retained a trace of life. In their eyes, there was fear, despair, and confusion, many complicated emotions intertwined. They didn't know who they had offended. They didn't know who had such terrifying strength. Killing 30,000 vampires with 1 palm. Even the 2 super-mutated vampires didn't have the chance to escape. It was too terrifying. It was really too terrifying. Thinking of the Blood Buddha from before, he seemed to understand a little. That was the mysterious power from the mysterious East. Since ancient times, he had often heard people say that the mysterious East possessed a mysterious power. However, after becoming a vampire, he threw all of this to the back of his mind. Especially after becoming a level 10 super-mutated vampire, he was even more disdainful of the mysterious East. What mysterious power was more mysterious than the noble vampires? It was just a group of uncivilized barbarians. However, now he knew that there really was a mysterious power. Especially that eastern country, it was a mysterious and powerful country. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have sent people to that country. He shouldn't have provoked that mysterious power. However, it was too late for regret. At this time, under the suppression of this mysterious power, even his self-healing ability had disappeared. In the midst of all the regret, the Smith couple's consciousness gradually became confused. At the last moment before their consciousness completely fell into darkness, they seemed to see a figure from the east in the sky. The blood-red wings behind him were so red that they shone under the setting sun. These blood-red wings were thousands of times more noble than the bat wings of the vampires. In the next moment, the 2 of them completely lost consciousness. Even their only heads had turned into blood and seeped into the ground. At this time, Immerse was floating in the air above San Francisco. Looking down at the ruins of the city that seemed to have been hit by a nuclear bomb, there was also a trace of shock in his eyes. The bloody handprint that absorbed 8 million zombies was actually so terrifying. With 1 palm, a city was destroyed just like that. None of the 30,000 vampires could resist at all. And just now, when his consciousness entered the Blood Buddha clone, he looked down on everything and looked down on the common people. He truly understood a sentence: all living things are ants. He looked down at the ruins of the city. Although the city was destroyed, all the blood-red vines, zombies, hives, and vampires were also destroyed at the same time. He seemed to have understood something in his heart. He murmured, all living things are ants, and everything is like floating clouds. Chapter 175. Immerse's consciousness was in the Blood Buddha avatar just now, looking at the world from the perspective of the Blood Buddha. The feeling of being the world and looking down on all living things gave him a hint of enlightenment in his heart. Tens of thousands of ants, only I am supreme. With this hint of enlightenment, Immerse's dragon's will, which hadn't increased for a long time, actually grew rapidly. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, in the end, his dragon's will actually reached 10 times more than before. Only then did the growth of his dragon's will stop. This was a pleasant surprise. Immerse could feel that if he had this enlightenment 2 more times, his dragon's will could be upgraded to level 3. If it reached level 3, he might be able to easily crush a level 10 super mutant vampire with just his dragon's will. Then, Immerse took a look at his evolution points in his mind. The more than 8 million mutated zombies and more than 30,000 vampires just now gave him nearly 1 billion evolution points. The total number of evolution points had already exceeded 8 billion. He only needed the last 2 billion to upgrade the system again. Next, Immerse said in his mind, "System, sign in for a special event." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in event, eliminate the vampire Smith family, sign in reward, 1 blood slave, blood slave? Immerse checked this reward in his mind. This blood slave was a small bat the size of a palm. It looked like an ordinary bat. When Immerse focused all his attention on this blood slave, a line of words appeared. Blood slave, condensed from the flesh and blood of vampires. Dragon's will can be poured into it and used as a scout. The blood slave can ignore any detection of telekinesis, energy, consciousness, danger perception, and the like. Immerse was secretly happy. This blood slave came at the right time. Just before Ancestor Smith died, he plundered the memories of that ancestor. From that guy's memories, he knew that there were 12 other families in the vampire race. The number of vampires in each family reached tens of thousands. Every family had a level 10 super mutant vampire. And above all these families was the true ancestor of the vampire race, Count Dracula. He was a member of the blood race who stood at the pinnacle of the world. Its ability was far beyond that of a normal level 10 blood breed. There was some kind of restriction in this world. As long as he reached level 10, he would encounter that restriction. Even if the strength of his body could continue to increase, and his speed could continue to increase. However, he was still unable to break through his limits and reach the next realm. Count Dracula, the ancestor of the blood race, was a super powerful being who was infinitely close to breaking through that limit. As for how strong he was, no one knew. Because no one had ever seen Count Dracula. Immerse was still thinking about how to find out more about Count Dracula's lair. Now that he had this blood thrall, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. With a thought, he took out the blood slave from his backpack. At this moment, the blood slave did not have any consciousness. It remained motionless in Immerse's palm. It seemed to be just a lifelike bat. He split a strand of dragon will and infused it into the bat's body. In the next moment, the bat seemed to come alive. It flapped its wings and flew up. Immerse could feel that after this strand of dragon will entered the blood slave's body, it was no longer his own dragon will. It had completely become the blood slave's dragon will and developed an independent consciousness. And it also had its own unique growth system. This growth system did not require Immerse to check on it from time to time like the sea dragon clone. The blood slave's growth was completely independent. Immerse did not need to care about it, and it could grow freely. Of course, it still obeyed Immerse's orders 100%. And it could also communicate with Immerse using Dragon Will and report the situation at any time. Immerse used Dragon Will to issue an order to the blood slave. Go to all the blood breed settlements and investigate their strength. The blood slave squeaked in response, flapped its wings, and silently disappeared into the darkness that gradually enveloped the earth. Immerse, on the other hand, took out the dragon's lair with a thought. He entered the dragon's lair to cultivate Longway. Although with his current strength, he was confident that he could dominate the world. But it was better to be careful. He would not act rashly before the blood slave figured out the situation. While cultivating Longway, he also tried to transfer the energy in his back and shoulder blades to his whole body again, using it to refine every cell in his body. This time, he managed to last several times longer than before. He could already last for half an hour. The next morning, after Immerse woke up, he used dragon will to communicate with the blood slave. The blood slave had already investigated the strength of the two blood breed families in one night. But Immerse did not immediately make a move. Instead, he ordered the blood slave in his mind. Continue to investigate the other families and find Count Dracula as soon as possible. The blood slave responded, flapped its wings, and continued to fly to the next blood breed family settlement. Immerse used Dragon's Shadow Step and flew toward Quanua City. Previously, from the broodmother's consciousness, he knew that the largest broodmother in Country M was in Manhattan, Quanua City. It was more than 2,900 kilometers from San Francisco to Manhattan. With the speed of Immerse's Dragon's Shadow Step and the delay on the way, it only took him 6 minutes. At this time, Immerse was standing on the first floor of the World Trade Center. This building was also known as the Freedom Tower. It was 541 meters tall, the tallest tower in Manhattan. Looking down from here, Manhattan was shrouded in the morning fog. There were dozens of tall buildings, piercing through the morning fog, towering over the city. Immerse's dragon will covered the entire city, investigating everything here. This was worthy of being the city with the most skyscrapers. The entire city was divided into two halves by red and green. The eastern half was covered with green vines and plants. Among them, there was a base, Manhattan Base. The buildings on the western half were covered with blood-red vines. These blood-red vines finally gathered in a huge broodmother. This huge broodmother occupied half of the city. One had to know that the entire Manhattan was about 60 square kilometers. This broodmother occupied half of the city. This was definitely the largest broodmother that Immerse had seen so far. This broodmother was not sealed like other broodmother. Instead, only half was sealed. The other half was like a bloody mouth that wanted to devour the remaining half of the city. Immerse was secretly amazed. This broodmother had a big appetite. It wanted to devour the entire Manhattan. Looking down with the blood dragon's eye, he saw that there were more than 10 mutated zombies around the broodmother. There were countless strong mutated zombies. Chapter 176. This huge mother nest was actually trying to swallow the entire city. And there was no doubt that if this continued, it would swallow the entire Quanua City. Immerse did not immediately attack this mother nest. With the strength of the more than 10 level 10 super mutated zombies in this mother nest, it would be easy to attack the base on the other side of the city. But they had not attacked until now. It was obvious that there were other reasons. He planned to go to the base to investigate the situation first. With a thought, he probed the base. He saw that the base occupied 1/3 of Manhattan. On the high walls of the base, there were all kinds of cannons. Outside the high wall surrounding the base, there were dozens of tanks parked. But these cannons and tanks had long been rusted. Obviously, no one had used them for a long time. Under such circumstances, there must be a special reason why they could still defend until now. The high walls divided Manhattan into two. Inside the high walls was a green world. Outside the high walls was a blood-red world of zombies. But these zombies did not seem to have any intention of attacking the base. Just as Immerse was investigating, the thick metal door on the high walls slowly opened with a creaking sound. When the zombies outside the door saw the door open, their eyes were filled with bloodthirsty gazes. But even so, they did not pounce on the door. Instead, they seemed to be waiting for something. At this time, 2 naked men were carried out by 4 hunters and thrown out of the door. The 2 men begged and screamed miserably. "No, please, don't do this, don't do this." However, the hunters ignored their pleas. The creaking sound rang out again. The door slowly closed. Seeing this, the 2 men hurriedly pounced on the door. They kept banging on the door. They banged on the door. This banging sound echoed on the quiet street. At the same time, the eyes of the zombies, who seemed to have been hungry for a long time, bloomed with blood-red light. They roared and pounced on the two naked men with bared fangs and brandished claws. The two naked men were also hunters. They quickly condensed their genetic weapons and cleared the zombies around them. In just a few minutes, the hundreds of zombies around them were cleared. A thin layer of blood mist slowly rose into the air. But the two naked men did not have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a shadow flashed past them without warning. A line of blood appeared on each of their necks. When they turned around, they saw a zombie looking at them. There was a fist-sized hole on the zombie's face. Even so, it was still grinning. The scene looked very strange. The two naked men only had time to say, "Super mutation." He fell to the ground. The surrounding zombies immediately pounced on him. It was like a pack of wolves surrounding a sheep and gnawing at it. In just 5 minutes, the two of them were eaten. In front of this group of hungry zombies, the two hunters didn't even have the chance to turn into zombies. On the watchtower behind the high wall, the two hunters shook their heads as they watched the scene unfold. Immerse was puzzled when he saw this. What the hell happened in the Manhattan base? Using humans to feed zombies? Wasn't this a little too freakish? Shaking his head, he decided not to think about things that he couldn't figure out. He leaped and landed on the ground. He didn't use his telekinesis or wings to reduce the impact of his landing. The body of a level 7 Great Hunter was strong enough to withstand the impact of falling more than 500 meters. The wind whistled in his ears. The skyscraper next to him was rising rapidly. The next moment, boom, Immerse's feet slammed heavily on the ground. The entire street, with Immerse as the center, instantly caved in a bowl-shaped crater with a radius of more than 50 meters. The ground within a radius of 100 meters cracked inch by inch under this huge impact. At this time, Immerse was slowly walking forward. Hundreds of zombies on the ground nearby were all sent flying hundreds of meters away by the force of his move. After landing, each of them had broken bones and tendons and couldn't get up. After hearing the noise, the zombies in the nearby streets all roared and rushed over. But soon, Sanguisurincus extended from the ground. This caused the Sanguisurincus to pierce into the bodies of these zombies, and then they were instantly torn apart. As long as Immerse passed by within a radius of 100 meters, Sanguisurincus as thick as a human thigh would constantly appear. These Sanguisurincus were like kelp, swaying in the air. As long as a zombie got close to the Sanguisurincus, it would be torn apart in an instant. As for those ordinary zombies, they were still stupid enough to pounce on them. But the strong mutated zombies, and even the super mutated zombies, didn't dare to come forward. Just like this, Immerse walked all the way to the entrance of the base. The zombies on the nearby streets were almost all cleared by him. On the sentry tower, the two hunters were still puzzled. Why were there suddenly no roars of zombies nearby? At this time, in the blood fog outside the entrance, a human figure slowly walked over. Is that a human? Seems like an Asian. What's going on? How could a human pass through the entire infected area? In his surprise, a hunter shouted to Immerse, who was below him. Stop. Who are you? Or a zombie? Immerse didn't pay attention to them. With a leap, he instantly soared into the air. He crossed the high wall and landed in the base. Seeing this, the two hunters hurriedly sounded the alarm. At the same time, their hurried shouts came from the loudspeaker. A humanoid creature has broken in. It's very likely to be an infected person. An unidentified humanoid creature has broken in. It's very likely to be an infected person. Because zombies and vampires were all in human form, they collectively called them humanoid creatures. Soon, more than 200 hunters and 60 psychokinesis rushed out from all directions, surrounding Immerse. Immerse's cold eyes glanced around. Dragon's mind instantly spread out. It pressed down on all the hunters and psychokinesis. Bang 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 bang, all the hunters and psychokinesis were instantly crushed to the ground by the huge pressure. psychokinesis was slightly better. When they fell to the ground, they only felt extreme pain in their bodies. As for the 200+ hunters, they smashed down with such force that the cement road cracked open. All the hunters raised their heads in pain and looked at this Asian in horror. It was obvious that this Asian was psychokinesis. But was there really a psychic in this world with such strong telekinesis? On the other hand, the fear and shock in the hearts of the 60 or so psychics far exceeded that of the hunters. As psychokinesis, they knew clearly that even if they reached level 10 psychokinesis, they were far from being able to do this. In other words, this Asian's psychokinesis had already surpassed the limit of level 10 psychokinesis. It had reached a level above psychokinesis. Chapter 177. In the Manhattan base, all the hunters in psychokinesis were looking at Immerse in horror. They all had the same ridiculous thought in their minds. This Eastern psychokinesis might have broken through the limit of psychokinesis and reached the next level. No one knew what was stronger than psychokinesis. After all, up until now, none of the psychokinesis in the base had reached level 8. Not to mention breaking through the limit and reaching the next level. However, the power that Immerse just showed made everyone understand that it was the next level of psychokinesis. Even the 2 level 7 telekinesis masters in the Manhattan base were unable to put up any resistance under the suppression of this Asian man's telekinesis. They were immediately crushed to the ground. As for the 2 strongest level 8 hunters in the base, even with their strong bodies, they couldn't even last a second under this Eastern man's psychokinesis. They were directly pressed to the ground. This kind of power was impossible for a level 10 psychokinesis to achieve. At this moment, Immerse finally spoke slowly. "I'm just passing by and came in to ask a question." With the foreign language proficiency skill, he could speak any language on Earth at will. As soon as he said this, everyone else was stunned. Passing by? There were zombies everywhere outside, and there were even vampires that were stronger than zombies. How strong was he to be able to pass by in such an environment? The bald black hunter in the lead took a step forward and said, "That's right. Before we do a virus test, we must isolate you." Immerse turned his head and slowly looked at the bald hunter. The bald hunter felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar when Immerse glanced at him. This Eastern man's eyes were like an abyss. Just by looking at each other, they felt as if they could fall into the abyss and be swallowed by it. That kind of creepy feeling made all the hair on his body stand up. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva as his Adam's apple moved. He changed his words, "Okay. You can ask the general what you want to ask. I'll take you there now." The other hunters and psychics looked at the bald black man in confusion when they heard this. Every one of them had a black face full of question marks. The bald black man ignored them. He lowered his head and quickly led Immerse away. When the others saw this, they began to discuss in low voices. "My God. Why did the regiment commander change so much? Commander has always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. He would rather die than submit to coercion. What's wrong with you today? Why did you change your mind on the spot? That's so unlike him. Did the commander take the wrong medicine? No matter how strong that Easterner is, with Captain's character, he shouldn't have admitted defeat on the spot. How could they know what their commander had just faced?" In today's post-apocalyptic world, life and death were nothing to be taken lightly, and there were many people who would fight if they were not convinced. However, not many people had experienced the despair of looking into the abyss, as if they were about to be swallowed up in the next moment, and the fear that came from the depths of their bones. As for their commander, he was fortunate enough to experience all of this when he met Immerse's gaze. At this moment, a white psychokinesis said, "If the commander takes this Easterner to see the general, do you think the general can deal with him?" "I think it's very possible. With the general's strength, the thousands of zombies and vampires outside couldn't break through our walls." "I agree. This Easterner is indeed very strong, but compared to the general, he's too weak." At the same time, when Immerse was passing through the long and narrow street, the civilians saw Immerse, an Easterner, being taken to the general. They all shook their heads and sighed. Immerse paid attention to the expressions and demeanor of these civilians. He felt that these people seemed to be in awe of the general. At the same time, when these people looked at him, some had a trace of sympathy, while others had a sneer on their faces. This made Immerse feel that if he was taken to the general, he would be killed in minutes. However, Immerse didn't care. In this world, there was nothing that could kill him. Even if the general was really strong enough to kill him, his consciousness could instantly leave his body and go into the body of the sea dragon clone. While Immerse was thinking, a Chinese woman on the side of the road suddenly shouted to Immerse in Chinese. "Don't go. Don't go to see the general. You must not go." Immerse turned his head and glanced at the woman, but didn't pay much attention to her. However, he was already sure that the general's strength should be extraordinary. And it seemed that the entire base was afraid of him. 2 minutes later, Immerse was taken to Central Park. Central Park was huge. It was about 4 kilometers long and 0.8 kilometers wide. It was a small miracle that there was such a huge park in Twisting Covenant, where skyscrapers were everywhere. This place was once called the Twisting Covenant Lung. It attracted tens of millions of people from all over the world to visit every year. On the lawn in the park, there was a woman with a hot figure, blonde hair, and blue eyes. She was wearing a tight white short-sleeved shirt and denim hot pants. She looked sexy and hot without losing the sunshine of youth. At this time, she was playing golf. In the apocalypse, there was such a leisurely mood. Other than Immerse, she was the second. The bald man whispered to Immerse. "That's the general." Immerse was a little surprised. He quietly activated the blood dragon's eye and looked at the woman. With this look, Immerse immediately understood. All the doubts he had along the way were answered. The bald man brought Immerse behind the woman. There was a hint of reverence in his tone. "General," an Asian came in from outside the base. He said he wanted to ask for information. The woman didn't turn around. She swung her club and watched as the ball crossed an artificial lake and accurately smashed into a hole more than 100 meters away. Only then did she turn around. She waved at the bald man. The bald man hurriedly lowered his head respectfully and left as if he was escaping. It was as if he would be swallowed alive by the woman behind him if he was a second slower. At this moment, the woman threw the cue to the side. She pulled off the rubber band that tied her hair. Her golden hair immediately spread out like a waterfall. She turned around and carefully sized up Immerse. A moment later, she shook her head slightly. "He's a little thin. But his face is not bad. I've always been more patient with men with good faces like you. Ask what you want to know quickly. After you're done, we'll get down to business." Then, she reminded him, "You came from outside the high wall. You should have seen the 2 men who were eaten, right? If you can't satisfy me, then the 2 of them will be your examples." Seeing this, Immerse's eyes were filled with a hint of mockery. He slowly said, "Aren't you afraid that I'll taint your noble bloodline?" Chapter 178. This blonde woman with blue eyes, a hot figure, and a beautiful face. Facing Immerse, she directly said, "Ask what you want to ask. After you're done, let's get down to business." Immerse had a teasing look on his face. "Aren't you afraid that I'll taint your noble bloodline?" The smile on the woman's face froze. She looked a little surprised and sized up Immerse from head to toe. "How can you tell?" Of course, she didn't know that Immerse had the blood dragon's eye. He could see through the appearance and see through the woman's identity at a glance. Species, vampire, level 10 super mutated, ability, psychic illusion, psychic charm. Because she was from the blood race, everything made sense now. Vampires were stronger than zombies. Therefore, with her here, those zombies didn't dare to rashly attack the base. That was why the nest, which had planned to devour the entire city, didn't continue to expand. And those humans, in front of this powerful level 10 super mutated vampire, could only submit. Even if she wanted 2 men every night, once the 2 men couldn't satisfy her, they would be thrown outside the high wall to feed the zombies. No one in the entire base dared to resist her. Because without her, the super mutated zombies outside the high wall could raise their entire base to the ground in just 10 minutes. Of course, Immerse naturally wouldn't tell her all this. He simply replied, "Intuition." Hearing this, the female general laughed out loud. She took a few steps closer to Immerse and put her slender and fair right arm on Immerse's shoulder. "You can actually recognize that I'm a vampire. I'm getting more and more interested in you. Tell me, what do you want to ask?" Immerse was a normal man. Facing this woman's seductive eyes and seductive actions, it was impossible for his heart not to ripple. But it was just a ripple. This woman was a vampire. He wasn't that hardcore. Immerse looked at the eyes on the woman's beautiful face and said indifferently, "I want to know all the information about the vampire's nest." Hearing this, the woman was a little surprised and joked, "You're a human. Why do you want information about the vampire's nest? Could it be that you want to kill your way into the Blood Clan's lair alone? Wipe out the entire blood race?" Immerse's expression was calm as he nodded, "Yes." When the Blood Clan woman heard this, she couldn't help but be startled again. Then, she burst out laughing so hard that she was trembling. He spoke in the tone of a senior. "You're an interesting human. However, do you really think that you can destroy the 13 ancient Blood Clan clans just because your telekinesis is strong? Do you know how powerful Count Dracula is? Do you know that after the Blood Breed virus and Virus X combine, they will mutate and have unlimited self-healing abilities and are basically unkillable? You don't know anything, yet you dare to say such big words." Using an old saying from the East, the ignorant are fearless. Immerse shook his head slowly. "You talk too much." As he spoke, an incomparably powerful dragon consciousness instantly spread out. Under the sweep of his dragon will, the woman in front of him was like a vase that had been smashed to the ground, shattering with a crash. Then, the surrounding ground, trees, artificial lake, bridges, everything, including the entire Central Park, was shattered. All the fragments quickly turned into green light spots and disappeared. And the scene in front of Immerse had completely changed. At this moment, he was no longer in Central Park. Instead, he was on the second floor of a building in Times Square. In front of him stood a woman. This woman was exactly the same as the woman who had shattered just now. The same hot and sexy, the same youthful sunshine. It turned out that everything just now was an illusion. From the moment the bald black man brought him to the bottom of this building, he had already entered an illusion. However, Immerse's blood dragons I could see through the appearance and see the essence. So when he activated the blood dragon's eye, all the illusions were a joke in his eyes. At this moment, the woman standing in front of him was very surprised to see Immerse break free from the illusion. Although she was a Blood Clan member, she was also a level 8 psychokinesis. And her telekinesis had mutated. She could create illusions. In the illusions she created, no one could break free. Even those level 10 mutated Blood Clan members couldn't do it. How did this human break free? However, the surprise on her face was quickly concealed. Her blue eyes looked at Immerse sincerely. Her eyes were filled with tears. She said pitifully, "Sorry, I didn't want to either. I was forced. Can you forgive me?" As she spoke, she emitted a fatal charm. Compared to before, the temptation was 100 times stronger. Under this fatal temptation, her mouth was already in front of Immerse's neck. At the same time, the 4 teeth in her mouth slowly turned sharp. At the same time, a hint of killing intent suddenly flashed in the endless charm in her eyes. She had used this move to kill countless humans. However, at this moment, she heard a faint sigh from this Eastern man. She couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. Wasn't this man already bewitched by her? What was the meaning of this sigh? At this moment, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her brain. It was so painful that she almost lost consciousness. She didn't have time to think and suddenly bit Immerse's neck. Ding ding, two soft sounds, as if she had bitten a piece of iron. No, with her strength, even if it was a piece of iron, she could bite through it. But her sharp teeth couldn't pierce through this human skin. This woman was completely shocked. The teeth of the Blood Clan members were originally like sharp swords, invincible. The only thing that couldn't be pierced was the level 10 mutated body of Vajra. Could it be that this human strength had reached the level 10 mutated level? In shock, the clothes on her back were instantly torn apart. A pair of huge wings protruded from her back. On the wings, the sharp claws directly pierced toward Immerse's eyes. However, at this moment, swish, a ray of icy blue light flashed. The woman's head flew up in an instant and flew far away. At the same time, her body was quickly frozen. Along with the entire room, it was also frozen. Viscous liquid could be seen from the cut on her neck, bubbling non-stop. It was as if porridge was being cooked in an ice jar. At this point, this level 10 mutated Blood Clan member was dead. Until her death, she couldn't believe that as a level 10 mutated Blood Clan member, she couldn't even resist in front of this human. She was actually killed in one hit. What happened to having an body of Vajra after reaching the level 10 mutated level? What happened to not dying even if one's head was cut off? Fairy tales were all nonsense. What puzzled her the most was that this human was completely immune to her telekinesis charm. Was he still AF * King Man? At the same time, on the street not far from the building, the bald black man was waiting for instructions. Usually, at this time, it wouldn't take long for the man to be stripped naked and thrown out. His mission was to escort this man to the door and throw him out to feed the zombies. However, at this moment, bang, something suddenly fell in front of him. He instinctively took a step back. He looked down. The moment he saw it, his expression changed drastically. Chapter 179. When the bald black man saw what was beneath his feet, his expression changed drastically. It was a head. The head that was sealed in ice. Through the crystal ice, he could see the head inside. It was the general's head. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the second floor. He was waiting for the man to be stripped naked and thrown down. However, the man did not come down, but the general's head was thrown down. That man's strength was actually so strong. Was he able to break through the general's illusions and enchantment? Could he break the general's invincible Vajra body? There was another problem. Wasn't he a psychokinesis? Psychokinesis was strong, but his body was just an ordinary person's body. Once other powerful creatures got close to him, he could only wait for his death. However, he was in front of the general just now. Not only did he not die, but the general's head was thrown down. What was going on? Aside from all these questions, there was still the biggest one. If the general was dead, who would suppress the thousands of infected creatures outside the base? This was the thing that scared him the most. Thinking of this, he quickly turned around and ran in the direction of the hunter group. However, after running a few steps, he stopped. Then, he turned around and picked up the general's head that had been frozen. The hunter group's headquarters. A few members were joking. How long do you think that Easterner can last? I think he'll be thrown out in 10 minutes at most. Of course. Even the hunters couldn't satisfy the general. It would be strange if he could. Just as they were talking, the leader had already entered the headquarters. A hunter saw the leader enter and shook his head with a smile. Looks like I overestimated that Easterner. It didn't even take 10 minutes. Another psychokinesis said, nonsense. Of course. Although we psychics have powerful telekinesis, our bodies are still that of ordinary people. How can an ordinary person's body withstand the general's powerful body? Someone saw the bald black man holding an ice ball in his hand and asked in confusion. "Leader, where did the ice come from? It's not summer yet. It shouldn't be that hot." A hunter took the ice ball from the leader's hand as he spoke. However, as soon as he took the ice ball, his expression changed. He threw the ice cube away. Everyone was stunned when they saw this. He took a closer look at the rolling ice block. That is, a human head. The general's head. What's going on? "Oh, my God, the general is dead." Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. At the same time, on the second floor of a building in Times Square. After Immerse killed the general, he said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system's voice suddenly sounded frowny face. "Sign in successful. Sign in event, killed level 10 super mutant vampire mutant psychokinesis, sign in reward, dragon will illusion, dragon will charm." Immerse looked at the first skill. Dragon will illusion, creates an illusion using dragon will to confuse the enemy. Immerse nodded slightly. This skill was quite useful. As for the second skill, dragon's charm, forget it, let's not talk about it. She couldn't possibly ask him to use his beauty to trick her, right? No man would do such a thing. Then, Immerse flipped through this woman's memories. Through these two memory plundering, Immerse discovered that after these creatures reached level 10, perhaps because their brain cells were already strong to a certain extent, every time he used memory plundering on them, they wouldn't become idiots. From this woman's memories, he knew that this woman was a vampire who walked out of Castle Dracula. She wasn't the general of the base. Her twin sister was. When she was 5 years old, she was captured by the vampires and transformed into one. However, although she became a vampire, a 5-year-old girl tasted fear and loneliness in that dark, gloomy, and cold castle. Later, she went through a lot of hardships and escaped from the castle. Finally, she found her parents and sister. In the end, her parents and sister hated her because she was a vampire and chased her out of the house. Since then, her temperament had changed drastically. After returning to the castle, she absorbed a large amount of human blood. In the end, she grew into a level 10 super mutant vampire. She also awakened her psychokinesis and even mutated it. Thus, she came back again. She wanted to take revenge on her parents and sister. This was also the reason why she became like this. From her psychokinesis, Immerse knew that her sister was actually locked up on the 3rd floor of this building. Immerse walked up the stairs and slowly reached the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor, a woman who looked exactly like the general was chained up. However, this woman wasn't as sexy and youthful as the general. She looked like she was 20 years older than the general. Her blonde hair was disheveled. Her originally beautiful blue eyes were now devoid of any spirit. The blood dragon's eye looked over. Species, vampire, level 0/level 10 psychokinesis, ability, psychokinesis illusion, psychokinesis charm. This woman was transformed into a vampire by her sister. However, she insisted on not sucking human blood, so until now, she was still a level 0 vampire. It was also because she insisted on not sucking human blood that she was tortured every day. Almost every moment, her will was in a battle with her bloodlust. In such a battle, her psychokinesis grew much faster than ordinary psychokinesis. This allowed her to reach level 10 psychokinesis. When the woman saw Immerse appear, a bloodthirsty light suddenly appeared in her eyes. She even lowered her body, as if she was going to pounce on him at any moment. However, this bloodthirsty light was soon replaced by rationality. She quickly shrank into a corner, the chains on her body rattling. She hugged her knees tightly with both hands and let out a squeak that sounded like a bat's, but it was American English. "Don't come over. Don't come near me, go. Otherwise, you'll die." Immerse's dragon will moved. Crash, the chain was forcefully torn apart. His current dragon will had already reached a level where he could easily tear apart chains. The woman was stunned and looked up at Immerse. Immerse spoke slowly. Emma, you're free. The woman was stunned. She raised her head and looked at Immerse in surprise. Immerse didn't pay any more attention to this woman. He turned around and walked downstairs. Previously, he knew from Emma's sister's memory that her sister brought human blood to her almost every day. She forced her to drink human blood. But she refused. It was because he knew this that Immerse let her go. Emma's dark blue eyes flickered. She asked, "Are you going to Castle Dracula?" Immerse nodded. Yes. The bloodthirsty light in Emma's eyes was replaced by determination. Can you take me with you? Immerse naturally knew why she wanted to go to Castle Dracula. He nodded calmly. Yes. Chapter 180. Immerse took the woman and slowly walked down from the third floor to the second floor. The woman looked at the second floor that was completely frozen, and then she saw her sister's headless body that was sealed in ice. Tears glistened in her blood-red eyes. Immerse paused for a moment. He waited for the woman to say goodbye to her sister. Then he went downstairs. He walked towards the entrance of the base. The woman quickly wiped her tears and followed Immerse's footsteps. The civilians had already heard the news of the general's death. They looked at the Asian man with shock and fear in their eyes. When the Asian man was brought to the general, none of them thought that he would be able to leave here alive. After all, the general was not only a level 10 super mutant vampire, but also a level 8 psychokinesis. In their eyes, the general was invincible. But now, the Asian man came down alive and well, while the general died an unnatural death. No matter how imaginative they were, they couldn't figure out how the Asian man could kill the general. But this wasn't the biggest problem now. It was another problem. Now that the general was dead, who would deter the infected creatures outside? Emma, who was behind Immerse, suppressed the urge to rush towards these humans. Because it was too difficult, her voice trembled slightly. She asked Immerse, "My sister is dead, who will stop these infected creatures?" There were people in the world who gradually turned evil and perverted after being treated unfairly. There were also people who were still kind to humans no matter how much pain they had suffered. Emma obviously belonged to the latter. Immerse didn't answer and continued to walk forward. In the entire base, in the entire hunter group, no one dared to stop him from leaving. The people on both sides of the street also kept silent. Even those who had sneered and ridiculed Immerse quietly lowered their heads at this moment. They were afraid that Immerse would take revenge on them. A powerful being who could kill the general, if he wanted to take revenge, it wasn't something small people like them could bear. At this moment, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Beep, beep, beep. At the same time, a loudspeaker sounded. The infected creatures are attacking the high walls of the base. A super mutant zombie has rushed into the base. The announcer's words were extremely hurried. They're coming. Close the doors and windows. Those who can, immediately go underground and hide. No. Amidst the screams, the announcer's voice abruptly stopped. At the same time, the roar of a zombie came from the loudspeaker. Roar. Roar. In the base, when the 100,000 people heard the roar, they were all terrified. On the streets, people scattered in all directions. In the building, people locked all the doors and windows. The entrance to the underground sanctuary was the scene of a disaster. A large number of people rushed to the entrance of the shelter, but they could not squeeze in at all. From time to time, humans would be trampled to the ground, their bones broken. There were cries, screams, and curses all over the place. At the same time, at the gate of the high wall. Boom! The door collapsed with a loud crash. The infected creatures outside the door immediately rushed in like a tide. These infected creatures had previously been suppressed by the general to suppress their bloodlust. Now that the general was dead, their thirst for blood was like a flood breaking through a dam. Behind Immerse, Emma saw this and quickly spread out her level 10 telekinesis. Level 10 telekinesis was enough to tear these infected creatures apart. However, only ordinary zombies could not be resurrected after being torn apart. For those stronger mutated zombies, even if their heads were thrown off, they could still survive. As for the higher level super mutated zombies, they were not afraid of telekinesis at all. A level 2 super mutated zombie, seeing that this woman was so strong, roared from its throat, "Psychokinesis?" Then, it directly pounced on Emma. Emma wanted to use telekinesis to block it, but from the other side, 2 more super mutated zombies pounced. With her telekinesis, blocking 1 super mutated zombie was already very difficult. Not to mention 3. But at this moment, the 3 super mutated zombies that had just pounced in front of Emma suddenly exploded without warning. Boom boom boom, with 3 consecutive sounds, the 3 super mutated zombies exploded into 3 clouds of blood mist. Emma was only slightly stunned. Then, she looked up at the man in front of her. She naturally knew that it must be this man's doing. But, why was this man so strong? She was already at level 10 psychokinesis, but she was far from being able to do this. But this man dealt with it so easily. Could it be that this man's realm had really reached a higher realm than level 10 psychokinesis? But, her surprise had just begun. She saw the infected creatures that were pouring into the base like a flood. When they pounced on this side, they suddenly melted one by one. Like melted chocolate, after falling to the ground, they turned into a pile of meat paste. When she used her telekinesis to explore the surroundings, she found that it was not only these infected creatures that were pouring into the base. Including the thousands of infected creatures around the base, they were also melting quickly. After melting, they quickly gathered in the direction of the Central Park. This made her even more amazed by this Asian man in front of her. This man's telekinesis was so strong. He was so strong that it was far beyond her imagination and understanding. In extreme shock, she could not help but ask, "What is the realm above level 10 psychokinesis?" Immerse walked forward and said, "Psychic Master." Emma asked again, then, "You are a psychic master?" Immerse shook his head, "No." Then, he did not say anything and continued to walk forward. Emma's doubts in her heart deepened. If this man was not a psychic master, could it be a realm higher than that? Then, what was it? At the same time, in the base. These humans originally thought that they were going to die today. But at this moment, they suddenly saw the zombies that were pouncing on them melt into meat paste. They were all inexplicably horrified. "Oh, sh*t, this is so f***king disgusting. Why did these zombies suddenly melt? They are still moving after melting. What the hell?" But for them, they were still very excited that they had survived when they were about to receive their lunchboxes. At the same time, someone saw through the gaps of the high-rise buildings in the direction of the Central Park. There, a huge blood-red figure was slowly condensing and taking shape. Oh my God, what is that? A giant. A blood-red giant. Don't tell me it's another powerful infected creature. Just as they were wondering, the twisted flesh of more than 8 million infected creatures had slowly condensed and taken shape in the Central Park. The huge blood Buddha that was 1,000 meters tall appeared again. Chapter 181. All the infected creatures in Manhattan other than those below supermutation were turned into flesh and blood and condensed into blood Buddhas. However, the 1 million infected creatures in Manhattan were far from enough. Under the shroud of Immerse's draconic will, all the 8 million infected creatures in the 5 administrative districts, as long as their level was below supermutation, were all melted into meat paste. They were quickly wriggling toward Manhattan. Gradually, more than 10 minutes later. In the morning fog, a blood-red blood Buddha that was 1,000 meters tall appeared in Central Park. Due to the morning fog, people could not see the upper half of it. However, the sudden appearance of the blood Buddha still shocked everyone. "Oh my God, this is it's taller than the Freedom Tower. What the hell is this thing? If this is an infected creature, then our base is finished. Fear and despair rose in the hearts of the Westerners in the base. However, a few Chinese people recognized the giant's image. This is a Buddha. But Buddhas should be golden. Why is this blood red? A blood Buddha actually appeared among the infected creatures? This is unlikely. Could it be related to the compatriot who just came today? At the same time, Immerse's consciousness had already transferred into the blood Buddha clone. From 1,000 meters high, he looked down at the ground covered by the morning fog. This feeling of looking down on the common people made the trace of understanding in his heart increase a little. The draconic will also rapidly strengthened. Controlling the huge blood Buddha clone, he slowly turned his head and looked at the virus hive on the other side of the city. From this angle, the virus hive was like a huge frog with a huge mouth that was about to swallow the remaining half of the city. Immerse did not use the blood handprint. He had to save this move for other uses later. He controlled the huge blood Buddha and raised its right foot. It brazenly stepped on the virus hive. Rumble, it was as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was cracking. In the base, everyone felt the earth shake. The surrounding skyscrapers also shook violently. Everyone was shocked. Earthquake? Fortunately, the shaking only lasted for a few seconds. Soon, calm was restored. On the other side of the city, it was not calm at all. Under the foot of the blood Buddha, the virus hive that covered half of the city collapsed. Above the mother nest, the tens of thousands of tumors exploded. Blood immediately gushed out. In the broodmother's nest, all the blood vines and tentacles in the huge blood pool that occupied half of the city were trembling in pain at this moment. The Sanguisurincus wanted to extend upwards in an attempt to repair the nest. However, they were only able to extend halfway before they quickly withered away. When the tentacles saw this, they did not dare to extend any further. Instead, they quickly retracted back into the ground. However, just like the Sanguisurincus, they quickly shriveled up halfway. In the end, he stopped moving. This was because the blood in their bodies had been sucked dry. At the same time, the blood in the blood pool and the broodmother's nest was rushing towards the giant foot of the blood Buddha. They merged into the giant foot. Then, with giant foot as the center, all the infected trees, flowers, and Sanguisurincus in the half of the city that was infected quickly shriveled. Not only did the blood Buddha absorb the flesh and blood of all the infected animals, but it also absorbed the blood of all the infected plants. With the absorption of the blood, with Buddha's giant foot as the center, the color of all the infected plants in the surroundings quickly turned from blood red to dark red. After another 10 minutes, the blood Buddha had reached a height of 1,300 meters. At this time, Immerse's consciousness was in the blood Buddha. He looked down at the earth and looked up at the sky. He had a feeling that he was the only one in the world. In this feeling, his dragon mind continued to rise. He controlled the blood Buddha and turned to look at the northern part of New York. That was the St. Lawrence River. On the river, there were more than 1,800 islands of various sizes. This was the Thousand Island Lake of America. On one of the islands called Heart Island, there was an ancient castle. Bolt Castle. Immerse moved his mind and controlled the 1,300-meter tall blood Buddha to take a step. He took a step. Rumble, several skyscrapers collapsed with a loud rumble. He took another step. Several more skyscrapers collapsed. Soon, the blood Buddha's giant foot stepped into the St. Lawrence River. Plop, huge waves rose up from the river. At the same time, on Heart Island, in Bolt Castle. This was the lair of the Johnson family, one of the 13 great families of the blood breeds. There were more than 3,000 blood breeds living in the castle all year round. At the same time, there were more than 30,000 blood breeds living on the islands of various sizes around Heart Island. There were more than 100,000 zombies around these blood breeds. At the same time, in Bolt Castle, the ancestor of the Johnson family had just summoned 2 of his clansmen. He instructed the 2 clansmen, just now, Count Dracula sent me a message. He said that he sensed that something had happened to his goddaughter, Irene. Irene has always been among the humans of the Manhattan base. You two rush over immediately and investigate the situation. Remember, this is Count Dracula's order. The two clansmen's expressions immediately turned cold. A mission personally given by Count Dracula was no small matter. The two of them hurriedly bowed solemnly and elegantly. Yes, grandfather. Just as he said this, someone suddenly barged in from outside the door. Lord Johnson, bad news, bad news. Ancestor Johnson frowned and reprimanded. How many times have I said that even in the face of pressure, we must maintain our elegance? This is Count Dracula's teaching. Have you all forgotten? The blood breeds hurriedly said, yes. I'm sorry. Then, he slowly opened his mouth and said, Lord Johnson, a blood-colored giant more than 1,000 meters tall has appeared outside. It's coming toward our castle. Hearing this, Ancestor Johnson's heart trembled. Even though he had lived for hundreds of years, he had never heard of a giant more than 1,000 meters tall. This matter was definitely not a small matter. On his back, a pair of wings quickly tore the clothes on his back apart. He directly jumped out of the window. Flapping his wings, he flew into the air. Seeing this, the blood breeds who reported the news were slightly stunned. Wait, didn't they say that we must maintain our elegance even in the face of pressure? Ancestor, you're tearing clothes and jumping out of the window. That's not very good. Ancestor Johnson flew to the sky above the castle. He looked forward. He saw a giant more than 1,000 meters tall stepping on the river and striding toward the castle. With every step he took, a huge wave appeared in the river. When he stepped down, he could even see the silt at the bottom of the river. In particular, that giant more than 1,000 meters tall was emitting a monstrous demonic aura. Even as a blood breeds who had lived for hundreds of years, he had never seen such a terrifying demonic aura. He had been to Castle Dracula several times. But even the demonic aura of Castle Dracula was far from being comparable to the demonic aura of this blood-colored giant. Chapter 182. Demonic aura was also known as blood aura. Ordinary people couldn't see or feel it. Only those corpse hunters, psychokinesis, zombies, and blood clan could feel it. Only those extremely powerful creatures could produce blood aura. It was the matter in the cells in the body that naturally spread into the space. The stronger the strength, the thicker the blood aura. At this moment, the blood aura emitted from the huge blood-colored giant's body covered the sky and the sun. Ancestor Johnson felt a chill in his heart just by looking at it. Such a powerful creature was definitely not something he could resist. He quickly issued an order to all his clansmen. All blood clan members, run. At the same time, he issued an order to all the zombies around the blood clan members. All zombie servants, go up and hold it back. He knew very well that in front of such a powerful existence, it was impossible to escape just by running. Only by letting the 100,000 zombies around them delay it for half a minute would they have a chance to escape. Although all the zombies around them were unwilling to do so, they didn't dare to do it. However, they were afraid of Ancestor Johnson's methods. They could only brace themselves and plan to go up. At the same time, the clothes on the backs of all the 30,000 blood clan members in Johnson's family were torn apart. They flapped their wings and flew into the air. More than 30,000 blood clan members fled together. This scene was like the scene of those African birds taking off from the water at the same time in the animal world. It was spectacular. However, just as they flew off the ground, they discovered something strange. They saw that the 100,000 zombies that were originally facing the blood-colored giant. At this moment, they were all torn apart in an instant. Hiss, 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 more than 100,000 zombies were torn apart at the same time. The scene was like hell. The entire river was instantly dyed blood red. At the same time, the torn flesh did not fall to the ground. Instead, it was condensed by some kind of power. It quickly twisted into a chain made of flesh and blood. This blood-red chain was actually more than 3 meters thick. Both ends were in the shape of anchors. However, they were sharper than anchors. One of them was nailed directly to the ancient castle at an extremely fast speed. It pierced through the thick roof of the ancient castle, the ground, and the foundation of the ancient castle. It pierced deeply into the foundation of the ancient castle. The other end split into thousands of blood chains that were as thick as an arm. The tip of each blood chain had barbs that looked like anchors. In the next moment, the tens of thousands of blood chains shot towards the 30,000 blood tribe members. Chi! A blood chain instantly pierced through a vampire's shoulder and hooked onto his chest. He wanted to struggle, but he found that the barbs had already pierced deeply into his flesh. Not only that, after the barbs pierced into his body, hundreds and thousands of tentacles grew out in an instant. Deeply rooted in his body. If he wanted to forcibly pull out the chains made of flesh and blood from his body, he would be able to do so. Then there was only one way, to tear himself to pieces. At the same time, the same thing was happening to the other 30,000 members of the Blood Clan. All of the vampires were pierced by the blood-colored chains. The barbs pierced into his flesh. No matter how they struggled, they could not break free from the blood-red chains. Demon binding rope. How could they possibly break free? Even Patriarch Johnson, who was the strongest among them, had his back pierced by a blood-colored chain that was as thick as a thigh. Hundreds and thousands of blood-colored tentacles grew out of the blood-colored chains. They were like blood vessels that drilled into every part of his flesh and blood. Patriarch Johnson was shocked. He tried to pull and cut with his knife, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not break free from the chains. The chains seemed to grow inside his body. This was the overbearing power of the demon binding rope. It ignored levels. Of course, the higher the level of Immerse, the shorter the time they could control him. For example, Patriarch Johnson could only control him for 3 minutes at most. However, 3 minutes was enough. The huge blood Buddha was already 1,000 meters away from the ancient castle. In the next moment, the blood Buddha slowly raised his right hand. All the flesh and blood in his body began to gather toward the blood palm. In the end, it turned into a huge blood palm that was 5,500 meters long and 3,200 meters wide, floating in the air. It was like a huge blood-red cloud that covered the sky and the sun. When the vampires saw this, they were all extremely frightened. His face, which was already pale, became even paler. Patriarch Johnson felt it even more strongly. He frantically tore at the blood-red chains on his back and tore off a large piece of flesh. However, the chains seemed to have taken root in his body. All the tentacles had drilled into every corner of his body like blood vessels. Unless he tore himself into pieces, he would not be able to break free in a short period of time. He could only watch as the huge bloody palm slammed down towards the ground. Boom! The blood palm pressed down like a mountain. It slapped on the ancient castle in the center of the river. Immediately, a shockwave spread out. The river water was directly cut off by the huge palm. The speed of the river water downstream instantly increased by hundreds of times. It surged up from both sides. The river water upstream directly flowed backward under the shockwave. All the trees within a radius of more than 50 kilometers were constantly broken under the impact of the shockwave. After the shockwave, only a 5,500 meters long, 3,300 meters wide, and 5 meters deep giant blood-red palm print was left. The river water crazily poured into the palm print. As for the vampires from the Johnson family, without exception, they were all smashed into meat paste by the huge palm. In the distant sky, Missouri Sure's wings flapped lightly as he floated in the air. A hint of understanding flashed through his heart. He could feel that as long as he did it again, his dragon will would be able to break through. At the same time, on a building not far from him. When Emma saw this scene, the shock in her heart was vividly displayed on her face. After a long while, she withdrew her gaze from the huge blood palm and turned to look at Immerse not far away. A human could be so powerful. For an ordinary human, a level 10 super mutated zombie that was impossible to defeat was simply a matter of a kick in front of him. The mother nest that was so huge that it almost swallowed the entire city was just a matter of a kick in front of him. And now, the Johnson family and more than 30,000 vampires were just a matter of a palm in front of him. And looking at this Eastern man's appearance, he seemed to be at ease. How could a human's strength be so strong? Immerse closed his eyes slightly and carefully recalled the feeling when he used the Blood Buddha avatar just now. After a long while, he slowly opened his eyes. Then, he grabbed the shoulder of the woman not far away and flew toward the northwest. At the same time, in the Manhattan base, almost everyone was in a state of extreme shock. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.